Well, hello there trainers, greetings, KuroBlitz here, and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to have a discussion in terms of what could have been a great character development for the character of Ash Ketchum in the original series, comprising the regions of Kanto, Johto, and also the Orange Islands. And with me, I have a great fan of the original series and also a great defender of the Johto region, yours truly, Navy Blue Suicune.
Hello everybody, Navy Blue Suicune here.
Glad to have you here, Navy. How are you doing today?
Oh, doing well. I'm glad to discuss the topic of this video as well.
Yeah, we've been discussing this like on Discord calls like for a couple of days, and I feel like this has been something that we've been fabricated, and I feel like this is something that now that Ash is gone, we don't know if it's for good or just temporarily. There is something when it comes to the origins of his character that a lot of people don't talk much, and that's the character of Gary, right? Gary is a very interesting character, but the reality of the situation is that they didn't fought a lot now, didn't they? They didn't have much battles.
Yeah, he didn't have as much presence as many may have liked him to. And considering that he was Ash's very first rival, he was a large motivation for Ash in the OS series, as well as Professor Oak's grandson. You'd think Gary would show up a little more often or have more important battles.
Exactly, especially when you consider the battles of the games, because we battle like the rival for at least 6 times and then a 7th time in the league. One of the battles is not mandatory. Even in yellow, they kind of make that battle make whatever Eevee you get to face against. So here's a question, Navy. When Ash chose Pikachu because the other 3 were already chosen, Blastoise was only firmly confirmed to be Gary's in the Johto League at the very end. Did you think that Gary had Blastoise? Or when he debuted Eevee, do you believe that he retroactively had an Eevee? Because of Pokemon Yellow. Like, what were your first thoughts when Gary says, my first partner is in this Pokeball? Like, what do you think he picked?
Considering that up in the Indigo League, right? We don't get to see much of any of Gary's Pokemon except for like the Indigo League. I think we get and the Viridian Gym. We get to see him bring out his Nidoking and Arcanine, so we know that Gary has some. At that stage, we know he has certain Pokemon, but we never get to see his starters. So, what was it? On the morning that Ash woke up late to go get Pikachu, retroactively, yes, as you said, we now know that Gary picked Squirtle because how would he have Blastoise otherwise? But I mean, a lot of people could have also assumed that maybe Gary had picked Charmander or Bulbasaur. So looking back, yeah, no, a lot of people would have either assumed that he picked Eevee. Maybe Professor could give him an Eevee like the yellow counterpart, or I mean, Orange Islands post Orange Islands confirms that Gary catches an Eevee, so that's that nod. But yeah,
Yeah,
no, it could have been anything.
yeah. Like when I watched Arcanine and Nidoking, my thought process was maybe it was Blastoise because Arcanine is fire like Charizard and Nidoking is poison like Venusaur. So in the back of my mind, maybe he did had Blastoise because Ash got Charizard, but Ash got all 3. So it was always a mystery. We knew that, when Samurai, the trainer from episode 4, he tells Ash that 3 trainers from Pallet faced them and we see the starters, but it's never implied that Gary was amongst them. I was firmly believing that Gary had an Eevee because not only does he wake up early, he practically lived in the lab, so if Professor Oak wanted for his grandson to have some nepotism, I feel like that would have been in character. Like in the novelization of the Pokemon anime, Professor Oak is the youngest out of 3 brothers. His older brother is the mayor of Pallet, that basically gives Gary the limousine and the cheerleaders, and the middle brother is the post office general that makes the starters go to the lab. So, like, there's this whole world building that we sadly never got to see. Like, for example, Professor Oak is the one that gives Ash his first computer at the age of 5. But I feel like if we were to talk about the novelization, we would be here all day. But yeah, I do appreciate, this whole tremendous world building, because like when how do you feel when it comes to Gary's character? Because when Gary goes to Johto, he starts to walk on his own. He doesn't have the cheerleaders. They do show up in the Johto League. They never got their own names, which is kind of weird in retrospective. But when Ash goes to Orange Islands, Gary doesn't, and he gets an Eevee. It could have been the one from Celadon Department, could have been a wild one, or maybe like an homage to that. What do you think that Gary was doing while Ash was in Orange Islands? Like, because we have a parallel to that in terms of the character of Green Oak in the manga, because he trains Yellow and he gets that cape, and when Gary shows to Pallet Town, he also has that cape. I'm kind of mad that he didn't carry the cape to Johto, not gonna lie.
Yeah, that cape would have been it's great. It's great for character design, but also it shows like, oh, Gary's out here in the wilderness, like he's been up to some stuff.
Do, do you feel like he met any members of the Elite Four? Like, for example, like Ash met Lorelei as Prima in the Orange Islands, which the remakes then make Prima be a character from Four Island of the Sevi Archipelago. So the anime retroactively helped with the game's remakes. And I always believe that Gary could have met Bruno, because Bruno is the first one that Ash meets, and it's allegedly the first person that he sees facing on TV because the silhouette is extremely similar. They never confirmed it, but Gary's outfit could have been fitting of, meeting Bruno, or maybe Lance, because Lance also wears capes. Maybe Gary met Lance before Ash did. Agatha, I feel like maybe, not only because of the manga, but also because of Professor Oak, right? Like, Gary had a training regimen that we sadly never got the privilege to see, but I feel like that can go with the whole show, right?
I believe if it were any of those Elite Four members, I think it'd be Agatha. If we look at the Pokemon Adventures manga, uh, I think it's Green, right? The localization of first name is Green.
Yeah.
Adventures manga Gary or Green meets Agatha on a few occasions during the Yellow Saga of the Adventures manga. Plus, it would make sense for Gary to encounter an Elite Four member that Ash at that point hadn't. So if Ash had met Prima, he'd met Bruno, he would go on to meet Lance. It would make sense that also it would line up with the timeline somewhat because after AG, when Ash goes back to Kanto, he goes through Viridian City and meets Agatha, who's taken over for the Viridian City gym. Post the league and during the Orange Islands, I would believe that Giovanni and Team Rocket had already released custody of the Viridian Gym, and so like during the Johto period and Hoenn days, um, the Viridian Gym would fall under the authority and watchful eye of Agatha while they were scouting out a replacement gym leader to take Giovanni's spot. So, if Gary was going back through the Kanto region through a gauntlet to sort of train himself back up, because his loss at the Pokemon League was kind of he placed lower than Ash, and for someone like Gary who at that point had been built up to be better and smarter than Ash, that was very tough. It was just luck of the draw. He got a stronger opponent and they knocked him down. But Gary's not the sort who would just let that line down. So he went back through Kanto. He probably trained up his Pokemon. When we see him in his return episode, uh, toward the end of the Orange Islands, he's got his Nidoqueen. So he's trained up some new Pokemon. He's got an Eevee he's trained. By the way, that Eevee stronger than Pikachu at that time, which is wild to think about.
Yeah, and like even Gary faced Giovanni's Mewtwo, and in the games, his counterpart is the one that succeeds Giovanni. The anime didn't do it. They made Agatha an acting gym leader, and in the back of my mind, I always thought like Agatha is a ghost expert, but she also uses poison types. Did she covered for Giovanni, and was Koga the new Elite Four? Because in the back of my mind, I always was thinking about the idea of, when Lance shows up, I was like, okay, he's an Elite Four of Kanto. Maybe the story will make him the champion of Johto. They only did it in Journeys. but because the Silver Conference is in the Mount Silver, not in the Indigo Plateau, I I was always considering if the anime was going at one point combine the Elite Four in their own headquarters, like in Tojo Falls, or if the anime was going to make two distinctive Elite Fours and Lance was going to champion in both, but they never really tackled that storyline. Nidoqueen is interesting because Nidoqueen and Nidoking, they are they are counterpart Pokemon. Giovanni uses both, and they're both poison types. That's also, an expertise of Agatha. Um, we don't know if Gary had Nidoqueen along with Nidoking, or if he got that one after. In terms of showing, it show it after. So I feel like that's something to consider because,
Believe
like,
that Gary's Nidoqueen would have been a recent new capture at that stage, at that point in time, because him losing to and the Indigo League probably would have motivated him to go out and catch new Pokemon, raise existing ones. Gary rotates his Pokemon, unlike Ash, very frequently. That's seen in the Johto League. He's got a Kingdra, a Houndoom, a Skarmory. He's got plenty of Pokemon that he's never used that are just
he
on
he
his
has an
roster.
Alakaz.
So,
He has an Alakazam,
mhm.
which begs the question. When it comes to Nidoking and Arcanine, it shows that he had no issues in using evolutionary stones. My question to this is: did he use the evolutionary stones extremely early, or did he train and then waited? And when it comes to Alakazam, it means like, did he caught an Alakazam as a wild one, or did he touch trade it with someone? Like, there's a lot of things about, like, because we see Ash all the time, but Gary is extremely sporadic. That's just extremely saddening to think about. Like,
I feel
from
like with the stone evolutions, Gary looks to me to be the sort of trainer. If it were Ash, he'd probably is the sort of guy who'd go with what the Pokemon wants. His Gligar wanted to become Gliscor, so we only gave him the Razor Fang once he was resolute in that decision. Gary to me feels like the sort of guy or trainer who he'd keep his Growlithe a Growlithe so it could learn all the moves that it could at that stage and be its peak, and then he'd use the Firestone on it. Because we don't get to see Arcanine until, like, what? Viridian City? That's the
yeah,
8th gym. And considering that Gary, what was it? He was going for his 10th badge. Gary was 2
11th.
badges
He
ahead
was
of him.
going. He was going for his 11th. He had 10.
Yeah, he had 10 already. Viridian Gym was just like, he was probably just using it as a warm-up or a benchmarker for the league.
Do you feel like when Ash was in Orange, did that Gary faced other gyms in terms of like just as prep work for Johto? Do you feel like Gary just faced like more gyms as a prep for Johto or something?
I think he did. He may have gone back. I'd like to think that Gary went back and challenged, like, if he went back to Pewter, he probably battled Brock's dad, Flint, who was the acting gym leader at that time. He probably might have battled one of Misty's sisters. I'd like to think Daisy, since she's like the most competent battler of the three, as we see in Chronicles. Daisy actually has raised Pokemon as a really actually decent trainer.
Yeah, because
She's
like
probably second best to Cerulean behind Misty.
I'm seeing the badges that he has in terms of the canonical ones, right? He has the Pewter badge, so he probably faced Brock, but Brock never addressed it. He has the Cascade badge, so he probably faced one of Misty's sisters. Um, he has the Celadon badge, so he defeated Erica fair and square. Maybe that's when Growlithe
Sense.
show. Maybe that's when Growlithe or one of the Nidos showed their worth. He battled Blaine. He has the Volcano badge, so it's, if anything, it kind of makes him. What's the word that I'm thinking about? It makes him a hypocrite because he tells Ash. He tells Ash like, there's no gym in Cinnabar. This is a tourist trap. And then,
No, but remember, he shows the badge case to Ash as they're at Viridian after Cinnabar, which
yeah,
means Ash found the volcano and Blaine's gym first and
yeah,
helped out, and then a bit after they left, Gary probably found the gym and battled
he
Blaine
he,
and
he,
won.
he probably faced Blaine, like, because when Ash goes to Cinnabar, like, the Jigglypuff makes Gary fall asleep, And I feel like everyone in the island, they wouldn't, like, with the volcano erupting, word of mouth would spread. Maybe people were in sea foam for like a bit, or maybe they didn't escape at all because Kanto in OS was the Wild West, right? I would not be against the idea that, Ash's battle with Blaine was like the talk of the town for a while. It made the gym reopen, and Gary was like, I'm not gonna let Ashy Boy be the one with only the laurels, right? Maybe when Ash was helping the Blastoise with the Jigglypuff stuck on the cannon, maybe that's when Gary faced Blaine. So Gary never faced Surge, Koga, and who am I missing? Sabrina.
Sabrina?
He never he never faced the Team Rocket admins from the manga. Surge, Koga, and Sabrina. He never faced. Gary technically never faced Team Rocket because he only battled Giovanni. He never battled the admins of the manga.
I mean, to be fair, if we look at Pokemon episodes in what was it? There are like with the Diglett, right? The Diglett episode. Gary's around infrequently for Team Rocket attacks. Sometimes he's there with Ash, Misty, and Brock when like Team Rocket's attacking or trying to take Pokemon, right? There was a Johto episode where like I think they created a giant robot and they were trying to drain energy from a hydroelectric plant. It was when Gary was there with his Umbreon. They all
Yeah,
had to like work together and stop. I think it was the one with the giant Wobbuffet robot. Yeah, that was the one.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no,
So
he's around.
yeah, he's around, just not as much as he should have. So that's why we are perfecting the rivalry. So
Yeah.
these are the 18 matches that we crafted, like very sporadically. I was the one that got everything sorted. So this is 9 battles for Kanto and 9 battles for Johto. So let's get started with battle number 1. Let me know if you can see the slide.
Cool.
Okay, you can see the slide, right? So this is the battle record. It's in terms of for Ash. So this would be in Bill's lighthouse after Ash gets Krabby. Maybe Gary would show up and talk about the Pokédex, as we stated, and they would have a 2-on-2 battle in the beach before meeting Bill. This would be their first battle where Ash would lose. Ash would use Pikachu and Charmander against Gary's middle stage Nidos, right? How do you feel like this battle could go on?
Well, first off, I feel like, okay, since we retroactively know that Gary Starter was a Squirtle, and he eventually went to catch a lot of Pokemon, Professor Oak was very informative about Gary's progress if you look at the dialogue, right? Like, he had several badges over Ash, he was constantly catching more Pokemon than Ash, he was constantly ahead of Ash in terms of, like, his journey. So, I'd like to think that Gary caught that Nidorino as a Nidoran male and evolved it, and he caught the Nidorina as is because there are certain benefits about catching Pokemon already evolved. Like Gary probably didn't have to do as much work in raising Nidorina if that's the case. But in terms of this battle, Gary has Ash pretty outmatched here. Ash is working with what Charmander and Pikachu. With fire and electric moves, they can hit neutral. But the problem is that Gary's Nidorino and Nidorina are evolved Pokemon. That means higher base stats. They probably have a better move pool. They might have things like Bite, Double Kick, Focus Energy. They have a lot more to work with than the other two.
And they might
So right,
know Dig besides not being ground types.
plus the Needled species are known to be able to they're receptive to TMs. Who knows if Gary tutored them some moves? What if his Nidorino knows how to use Flamethrower?
Yeah, besides they are battling in the beach, so I feel like it would also be very disadvantageous for Charmander and Pikachu. I feel like this would be a cool battle to show that Ash has to evolve his mons. Maybe this could be the battle that kickstarts Charmander's not disobedience but wanting to evolve in some way, shape, or form. Because this happens before Surge, so it could make Pikachu question evolution before Raichu even shows up. I would like to imagine this battle in terms of hinting that Gary had Squirtle but not showing it because Ash chooses Charmander for this battle. Maybe Gary would say something around the lines of, "You're not worthy of seeing my starter Pokemon yet."
Yeah, that sounds like very Gary dialogue.
Yeah, okay, so let's go for battle number 2. Um, This one is a tie. It's a Nugget Bridge, which is Ash's Squirtle versus Gary's War Turtle. So Gary reveals the starter. But it shows that Ash's Squirtle also has a lot to prove because, like, it's a draw. I feel like this would be the battle where I don't want for Ash to have two losses in a row, but I don't want him to win just yet, if that makes any sense. How do you feel like this battle in a bridge specifically? So it would make Ash use the environment to his advantage because he can dive from the Route 24 river in and out with Squirtle, and so can Gary, right?
There is a body of water for the both of them to use. That's right.
Yeah, and this is, a nod to one of the to one of the game battles. How do you feel like this would turn out? Like, do you feel like Gary would use his starter because he sees value in Ash's Squirtle and just wants to try to one up him?
So the Nugget Bridge is located above Cerulean City, but below Bill's Keep.
Yeah,
Um,
this would still be
because
this will still be before Surge.
okay, so after Cerulean but before Surge, that means both Ash and Gary would have the Cascade Badge, which means they battled Misty and or her sisters. So coming hot off of Cerulean and using their water starters, um, yeah, Gary bringing out Wartortle to face Ash's Squirtle, it's probably the sort of thing where like it could be partly Gary showing off, being like, hey, no, I had a Squirtle too. I had him earlier than you, and now he's a Wartortle. Sort of both showing off to Ash, but also kind of in a subtle way being like, hey, this is what you can get to if you put in a little more work. My Squirtle only evolved sooner because I had him longer. Like, so I think you're saying it'll be a tie. I can see that because Ash's Squirtle was the leader of the Squirtle squad, and Ash used them very prominently once he started having them. Like, particularly Ash's three Kanto starters, when he caught them each, they all have personality and they all have their own, like, feats. Mind you, if this is Squirtle pre-Orange Islands, he doesn't have Hydro Pump or any of his stronger moves yet, but he was very fast, he was very witty, and I think Ash wasn't the most competent yet, but I think that even it being a first encounter with War Turtle, they're of the similar like evolutionary line. So I think there's a world where Ash relies on Squirtle's normal type moves to just do consistent damage.
Yeah, and Gary would try to basically, I have stronger water moves, but Squirtle resists. So what's the point of trying to show off stronger water moves? I feel like this would be a very interesting battle, like because it gives Ash a little of confidence in terms of, okay, now I'm equal footing because I draw with his starter, and that's not how it works, Ash. And Gary would say something around the lines of, this is just a fluke, like, because it kind of shows that Ash, he has a small roster but more consistent, and Gary's always rotating. And I feel like this would be a cool character development moment for Gary, because the moment he tries to show off his starter Pokemon, he doesn't even win.
Yeah, it's like Ash's Squirtle tied with your War Turtle. Your Pokemon's evolved, it's stronger, you've been at this longer, and yet you still meet even with the guy who you've been consistently ahead of. It's like it
You,
would probably get it in Gary's mind that a few of his Pokemon he probably has to keep on him at all times. Mind you, a trainer like Gary, right, who's a professor's grandson and is very intelligent, he would have that proclivity to raise several Pokemon because he doesn't specialize in any one type.
yeah.
Like, so he'd have that
They,
proclivity to rotate. I think he always keeps Ward the Squirtle on him, but for the others, like we never get to see what Pokemon he has in the Kanto days, aside from Nidoking and Arcanine and Nidoqueen and Eevee. So like we know by the Johto League, right? He has a Scizor, a Magmar, a Golem, uh,
Dodrio.
Dodrio, yep, and what was it? Oh yeah, he also brings Nidoqueen and Blastoise to the party, so that rounds out his six he used in the league. And
Yeah,
Umbreon.
and
Eevee
Umbreon.
becomes Umbreon.
Yeah, so I feel like this would be a cool battle. They could even Brock, because like I feel like Brock and Misty would be a cool commentary because it's two water types facing each other. So that alone is cool Misty development to see. For Brock, I think it would be more of the that War Turtle became as is because when he faced me, defeated Onyx, it evolved. It would give some flashback moments for Gary. So there's that. Now, when it comes to battle number 3, I feel like this is going to be Ash's first win, and you're going to see why. It's in SSN, And Gary uses Raticate and Growlithe, while Ash would use Pidgeotto and Butterfree. How do you feel like this battle would play out? Instead of Ash facing that random gentleman's Raticate, he would face Gary's. There would be no trade and no dead. Like, that's not gonna happen. This is the anime, right?
Yeah, yeah, I see what you went for there. The gentleman had the Raticate, and in the games and in the manga, Blue's Raticate, yeah, that's a notable thing. So this battle, would the matchups be across the board, like Pidgeotto faces Raticate and Butterfree faces Growlithe?
They could have switches. I feel like it would be like I feel like they could have switches. I just put it
Okay,
them like as because.
right.
How do you feel like they would go?
So if they were to release their Pokemon in this order, right? Like Ash sends that starts with Pidgeotto and Gary sends out Raticate, I think that's dead even because they don't really have the only advantage Ash would have is that Pidgeotto can fly, but then Raticate is a strong jumper, so Gary could just command it to use things like Quick Attack, Hyper Fang. He probably gave it a very versatile and varied move set because that's how Gary rolls. Like with Ash, he uses the moves that his Pokemon come with, and if they learn new ones, great. Gary seems like the guy who would actively teach his Pokemon new learn sets.
Oh, definitely, especially since Raticate can learn Thunderbolt and Bubble Beam.
So I think Gary would be the sort who may surprise Ash with like a move most people wouldn't expect out of Eradicate. So if this is on the SSN post Surge, maybe his Eradicate knows Thunderbolt. So I could see that going in Ash's favor if he relies on Pidgeotto's flight.
Yeah.
That's the only advantage it would have over Eradicate. Now, supposing that happens like that and Growlithe comes out, Growlithe beats Pidgeotto by utilizing its fire. So it probably knows Flamethrower. Flame Wheel isn't a move in this generation, so maybe it knows Ember, Fire Spin, Flamethrower, Takedown, that sort of stuff. It would probably like I could see Gary's Growlithe releasing a slew of flamethrowers to like get Pidgeotto close to the ground and then finish it with a takedown.
Yeah, I feel like it would be cool to have Takedown because Takedown is a move that it makes you lose HP. So it would make Ash question Gary, and Gary would he would say what he would have to say in terms of sometimes you have to take some risks, right? And then you have Butterfree, which would be at a disadvantage, but I feel like it's important for Butterfree to give Ash his first win against Gary before he leaves.
True that. And I can see Butterfree beating Growlithe because of Sleep Powder.
So
If you
it
put
would,
Growlithe and then just rack the damage, it would be a situation that Gary wouldn't be. See, here's the thing. Ash in the early series never came off as a strategic sort of like he never seemed the sort who would employ common strategies. He would do things like manipulate the environment, change the battlefield, be fast, trick them, do all this other stuff. Ash never seemed like the sort of trainer who would employ methods like what Richie would use, what Gary would use, what most gym leaders would use. Like there's all like common established things. Ash was always like sort of a dark horse in that regard. But if Gary sees Butterfree use sleep powder, he's like, oh no, because he
yeah.
recognizes the inherent value in that.
And especially since they are battling on the boat, I feel like Butterfree and Pidgeotto flying. It's one of those situations where Ash would win because of environmental setting, if anything. I feel like this would be a cool battle. So just for you to have an idea, because I made the slides be like red and green, right? And now that Ash has had two V2s and one 1v1, because I want for the battles to not just be always the same in terms of format. When it comes to battle number 4, this is interesting because it's Ash's second win, so but it's more plot contrived because of the situation that it happens, right? You can see it. How do you feel that like this would happen? Like instead of facing Team Rocket with their stolen Hitmonlee, how do you feel about Ash and Primeape beating Gary Spencer in the Grand Prix? Like,
For one, it would show that Gary would have interest in the Grand Prix and using fighting type Pokemon. I mean, he was there during the Diglett event, and he was there for Cinnabar Island. Gary just seems to be around. He should have been around more notably for like side events like that. Like, what if he had shown up for the Princess Festival? like not as a participant, but just to like watch, or like maybe he was cheering on one of his like
One,
cheerleaders, or like what if he was in the bug catching competition in Johto, you know? But here, hmm,
because he's
is
using
a
because
buggy fighting.
he's using a pincer because pincer knows fighting moves, but it's not a fighting mon. So it will be a
Yes.
natural Gary flex, like trying to win the Grand Prix with a non-fighting mon. I mean, Brock was using Geodude.
I think they meant fighting in the sense that they can scrap,
Yeah.
right? That they can throw
And,
hands.
and that and
You don't
that's and that's why I picked Pincer, because Pincer has fighting moves, but it's not a fighting type. Pincer doesn't know bug moves. In Generation 1, he doesn't know bug moves.
know. He probably knows things like Vice Grip, Stomp, Strength,
Yeah.
um, Rock Rock Smash isn't a thing. No, no, he wouldn't. He would just know like things like Guillotine, Vice Grip, things really relating to like his horns, his crushing ability.
Yeah.
But how this match would go. I could see Gary. Well, first off, Gary's not always there to. He's not like Misty and Brock in that he's not always around Ash. So whenever they would encounter each other, they'd probably both be taken by surprise by each other's new captures or evolutions. Like, Gary wouldn't have been there to see Ash catch Mankey, and I doubt Professor Oak would have let that slip because he doesn't exactly tell Ash and the others exactly which Pokemon Gary's caught. I mean, we
Yeah.
get where like we get to see his oversized crab in comparison to Ash's, but it was just being kept there out of coincidence. Like the fact that they saw it was incidental. By Gary encountering Ash with a primate, he'd probably be a little confused, asking like he might ask like, "Whoa, did you catch that as is, or did you raise it from a Mankey?" And then Ash tells him he caught the Mankey, and is like, "Okay, okay."
Yeah.
But
Especially
Pinsir,
especially since this happens after Celadon, so Gary defeated Erica, maybe with the aid of Pinsir, because he doesn't damage Tangela, but at least it's able to resist whatever Tangela throws at him.
I feel like Gary would have caught Pinsir either at I mean, I don't think Pinsir frequent the Viridian Forest, so Gary would have had to have either gotten Pinsir. I want to say either at Celadon or I'm drawing a blank. Where do you find Pinsir in Generation One again?
It's only in the Safari Zone.
Okay, so considering that the Grand Prix this happens after Saffron, so Gary's journey could have taken him that way. He might have gone to the Safari Zone early. I see that. I see Gary doing that. He might have gone through like the bike path or the other stretch below Lavender and gone to the Safari Zone earlier to make some captures. If Ash could get 30 Tauros, what's to say Gary couldn't catch like 30 species, right?
Yeah, because we know that Gary caught 60 species, but he had a total of 200 Pokemon, so he had repeats. Um, I feel like this would be a cool moment because it's like Ash finally has control of Primeape, but then Shudoisms would happen and Primeape would leave. But at least Primeape and Butterfree don't leave without giving Ash a win on Gary. But the wins are not really official because it's in a Saint Anne tournament in a way, and it's not in a real battle because it's like in a boxing match. But I feel like this would give Ash a confidence boost, and it would make Gary reevaluate himself because he already lost to Ash 2 times in a row in a 1v1 and priorly in a 2v2. So with match number okay, now this is match number 5. This is the first 3v3 and it's in Dark City. I feel like Ash and Gary would battle to end up on the behalf of the Yaz and Kaz gym, if that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
they'd be on opposing
They
sides.
would,
Like Gary would be
I,
there to train.
yeah, I feel like they would be on opposing sides, but I feel like this would be a cool moment where Ash and Gary are actually aligning with each other in a way to hey, this city is going bananas, right? So I feel like Gary would be the one to tell Ash, hey, listen, the inspection agency is here for the league. These guys are gonna close the gym, and we need badges. Here's what we should do. This will all be Gary's high Q plan. I'm going
Mm.
to enter one of the gyms. You are going to enter the other. We we enlist as trainers. We tell the leaders that we will battle the other ones, and it's like a mock fight, if that makes any sense. Instead of making turf wars between the gyms, Gary would tell Ash, let's go to the gyms, let's tell them that we will battle the other one on their behalf so that this war can stop. And Ash is
They're
like,
putting on a show, as it
yeah,
were.
it's basically putting on a show, but it's all part of Gary's plan, and of course, because it's part of Gary's plan, Ash will be reluctant in doing it. And I feel like it would be it would be for a show so that this city doesn't, basically gets destroyed out of the face of the map, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like when they reach there and the Nurse Joy as the inspection agency is there to officialize the match, she's like, okay, so if that's to be the case, you need to make this battle at least a 3v3. And by this point, Ash had 3v3s because of Erica, but not really because that battle went unfinished. I feel like if this would be the case in this reality, I feel like Gary would use, his iconic Raticate, the starter, and the other bug being Scyther because it would be a cool nod for Caesar in the future, right? And this would be the battle where Ash would use the starters. And you see the sparkles on Charmander. I feel like this would be a switching battle. And I feel like Charmander would evolve against War Turtle at the end, but it would lose the match to Ash because of type disadvantage. It,
Yeah.
it makes more sense for Charmander to evolve against War Turtle. He still loses, but because of, he was part of a play. Ash was putting a show. It was a mock fight. Charmander and Charmeleon would basically start to wonder, I evolved in a battle that was not even true, but I still lost. So is Ash even worthy of training me? So the disobedience arc starts.
Yeah, he gets like he starts to like doubt Ash's ability and his own like
Yeah,
it was all very unfortunate. So he
yeah.
just has to stick with that.
I feel like there will be a lot of cool matches here. Like, for example, Squirtle facing War Turtle again, maybe Charmander incinerating Scyther, or Bulbasaur and Scyther having like a jungle type of battle, or, Raticate trying to, chase Charmander or even Squirtle. There's a lot of mix and matches here. What do you would like to see in terms of these three Pokemon interacting with each other?
Hmm. I could see a world where they both where they're leads, right? I could see Gary debuting Scyther first, like he shows Ash his new capture. And then Brock and Misty probably warning Ash that hey, Scyther's a really strong Pokemon, it has good slash
Yeah.
moves and it's fast. Gary's not playing around.
If anything, Gary losing to Butterfree, because Gary is very smart. He knows that bug Pokemon evolve faster, but he also knows that bug Pokemon are weaker. But the moment Ash wins his first match against him with Butterfree, that could be the impetus for him to, seek out Pinsir and Scyther. So in a way, Ash is influencing him, but he doesn't realize it.
Yeah, no, losing to Butterfree might have jogged, and Gary's noggin like, okay, I lost to a bug Pokemon. Let me see if I can't add some of that power to my team and see if I can make some revisions.
Yeah.
So, see Gary leading with Scyther. Maybe Ash sends Squirtle after him because, his shell, he can use Withdraw. He can try and use Squirtle's speed to try and um, even out the odds. Then I can see, however that match goes down, I can see then the next matchup would be Raticate versus Bulbasaur. Um, Ash tries to go for a sleep powder again, like what happened with Butterfree, but Raticate's too fast, like he avoids it. So then Bulbasaur has a tough time, tries to rely on Vine Whip and Razor Leaf. Raticate like bites through the leaves and uses its tail to whack away the Vine Whip, and I can see Raticate taking the win against Bulbasaur
Yeah.
there. And then with Charmander, um, I can see Squirtle and Wartortle having another battle, but Wartortle takes down Squirtle this time because Gary's been training, so Wartortle has more experience now. And then the Charmander thing happens, and Charmander harms Wartortle some with fire moves. Like, it's probably like a smaller scale version of what happens in the Johto League. Remember when Charizard was using like flamethrower to burn the
To burn
battlefield?
yeah, like, but in this case I feel like Ash would not be like, I feel like Charmander wants to avenge Squirtle, but he cannot go all out because they are battling in the middle of a city made of wooden houses. So
Yeah, he probably uses like fire. He
yeah.
probably uses fire spin to like encapsulate War Turtle in like a fiery tornado, and then tries to go for a tackle attack. But then like Gary probably has War Turtle use water gun on the ground and like propel him out of the vortex. And then once they get to actual close fighting,
Was rapid spin a move in this generation?
it was, yeah.
So he would use rapid spin to counter the fire spin, if anything.
Yeah, yeah. So then that's when Gary well, this is a mock battle, but they still have to make it look convincing, so he goes in for the kill. What was it? That's when Charmander evolves, and then Gary orders a, I don't know, a surf attack. I think Dark City's like Saffron era. I think at this stage, War Turtle would have some stronger water moves, maybe Bubble Beam or Surf, and then
Yeah.
that's what puts down Charmeleon.
Yeah, and then like the like one of the gyms will become the official gym. Maybe it would be the gym with Scyther because like Kaz and Yaz gym they had a Scyther in the gym, and the other had an Electabuzz. So the Electabuzz gym would be the one that Ash would be battling for, and maybe the Electabuzz guy would say something around the lines of, "This is what happens when you didn't use an Electabuzz. The other guy used the Scyther and he went route right." And Ash like, "Hey, I tried my best, okay? None of your trainers were able to end this. At least I did something. And I evolved my Pokemon." And then he looks at Charmeleon, and Charmeleon's like, right? It's like, I evolved my Pokemon, and then Charmeleon is like, yeah, you did, but at what cost, right? It's like, it makes Charmeleon question Ash. Now for battle number 6, this is another tie, okay? This is another tie. It's in the ultimate test to get the certification for the league earlier. This is Gary's Tauros against Ash's. Because if Gary was in the Safari Zone, he probably caught one Tauros, right? So this would be something similar to the Palpoma Festival in the Johto region, but I feel like, hey, you need to show your worth in terms of, what you want to use for a Pokemon battle, just to see, like, what are you using. Maybe Gary caught a Tauros because Professor Oak, when he was the first champion of Indigo, he also was a normal type expert. He also had a Tauros. I feel like this Tauros would have a completely different moveset. Like maybe it could have Surf or something around those lines. I feel like there's nothing much for this battle because it's a draw. It's just it's just casual, like a bull versus another bull. I don't feel like there's much going on here. So don't you mind if I skip this battle? I just feel like I put this
Yeah,
here for
this feels almost like filler-ish. Like it's probably just they have this battle because like Ash got 30 Tauros, and this one's probably the leader one, his
yeah.
main one. But in Gary's case, he may have caught one or two. Gary strikes to me like he knows Tauros is a strong species, and he was probably interested in studying it from the principle that it's a really powerful normal type.
Honestly, I feel like one thing that could happen. I feel like I mean it's fillerish, but I feel like a cool narrative that they could show. It's basically Ash caught a full box of Tauros, and Gary only caught one. But because if they caught them both in Safari Zone, this means that Gary's Tauros would know Ash's. So sometimes in the animal kingdom, lions face each other to be the leader of the pride. Who's to say that Ash's Tauros is the leader of his pack, and Gary's was the one that in the wilderness tried to usurp the throne, or maybe he was the former leader of the Tauros pack, and Ash's Tauros, became the pack leader. Like I feel like this would be a cool concept. Like for example, one of them was the pack leader and it defeated the other, and they are now trying to make amends. Because yeah, like you lost, you're not the pack leader anymore, but we are now both under the ownership of trainers. So I feel like there's like a little of context here that could be added, but for a filler episode, I feel like it would just be a Tauros facing another Tauros. So let's go to another battle. This would be in Oak's lab in the Poke Corral episode. This would be the Poke Corral episode. Like in terms of training after the 8 gyms before the league, this would be another 3v3. This would be another battle where Ash would lose. He would not use Charizard because of reasons, right? So he would use the other two starters and Pidgeotto, and Gary would use trade evolution Pokemon, as you can see in the image. At this time, of course, that Rhydon is not a trade evolution, but it's Giovanni's ace, so I feel like Pidgeotto faced one. Let's see how he faces Gary's. And it's also a cool nod to the video games.
True.
How do you feel about how do you feel about these?
Okay, Alakazam makes a lot. No, Kadabra
Kadabra,
makes a lot
Kadabra.
of sense for. Kadabra makes a lot of sense for Gary. I mean, eventually it'll become an Alakazam. But yeah, no, Gary. hmm, We do know he has a Golem by the time in the Johto League, right? It
Yeah.
faces Ash's Charizard.
Mm-hmm.
So Graveler is a good idea. Ash should probably take note that like all of Gary's Pokemon have at least evolved one stage. Rhydon, to our knowledge, at that point in time, was fully evolved because Rhyperior wasn't a thing yet. Kadabra, he fought Sabrina's, so he knows what sort of Pokemon
and
that is.
and and he fought Giovanni's Rhydon under the hand of Jesse, but he also battled Blaine's.
Yes, he's encountered Rhydon before, so he knows they're no joke. And then with Graveler, it's a stronger Geodude. So Ash has probably had, if I remember correctly, Ash and his friends have had encounters with Gravelers in the Indigo League, but it was mostly like wild Pokemon and trainers.
Yeah,
Like oh, Giselle, she used a Graveler
she
against
was
starting
yeah, she had the
Pokemon.
she had the Graveler and the Sandshrew. I want to believe that Giselle, like, if anything, Giselle is like a ground trainer, but we don't know
Yeah,
how, like, we don't know how much.
I wish we'd gotten more of that.
Yeah.
But here, okay, I can see a situation where Ash leads with Squirtle and beats Graveler. But then, okay, so I can foresee a situation where Squirtle beats Graveler, but it's by the skin of its teeth, because just having the type advantage doesn't do a lot. Gary manages to have Graveler like use Rock Throw or Magnitude. He's throwing out physical moves to weaken Squirtle, which is his plan. So then Graveler goes down, but Squirtle's very tired and hurt but insists on keeping in the battle. Kadabra comes out and uses confusion to immediately throw Squirtle up in the air and slam it down to the ground, KOing it. So
Yeah.
so so Kadabra just comes out and one hits Squirtle. And then Bulbasaur comes out. Bulbasaur tries to use its grass moves, but a similar thing happens. He tries for a Razor Leaf, and then Gary orders like a a psychic attack, right? And then
Yeah.
all the leaves remain suspended in the air, and then Gary has them sent back to Bulbasaur, and then Ash starts to panic,
Yeah,
right?
because
Because
Bulbasaur is part poison, but Ash never utilized that asset of Bulbasaur.
yeah, no, a lot of times in the anime, a lot of trainers tend to forget that their Pokemon are half something else. So, a dual type. So then Brock and Mister are commenting that Ash is starting to lose his cool because like Brock would probably make a comment that Ash hasn't like had much experience fighting a lot of psychic type Pokemon before,
It's
seeing as
not
he's never
it.
raised one.
I don't think it's just that. It's also because Gary is playing a lot of the on the defensive here because he has Graveler and Rhydon. So
Yeah, so
he's playing a lot defensively. So Ash is questioning like what he should do.
and since it's at Oak's lab at the corral, so Oak's around. He's probably watching the battle too. He'd probably add a commentary. Professor Oak would probably add a commentary to Gary is like, yes, no. After his latest losses to Ash, Gary really retooled his team and worked up his strategy from the ground up.
This could also be like, for example, maybe Delia and Maimi are also around. So it's one of those situations where Ash is in a lot of pressure because he's battling Gary while Oak and Delia are seeing it. And
Yeah,
I feel like, for example, this is part of the narrative that I was trying to, construct here. It's the fact that Ash is using, because Ash is always using Pikachu for other battles, for gyms, and for Team Rocket, when it's time to face Gary, Pikachu is always tired. But he also doesn't want to use Pikachu all the time against Gary because it would feel something around the lines of, I cannot just depend on Pikachu. He needs to use everyone else. Like he like battling Gary for Ash, it's like 10% of his journey. Pikachu is used for the other 90%. We don't want to tire out Pikachu. But if Ash continues to lose, Pikachu would start to realize, hey man, maybe you should start using me for these again.
I mean, it makes a sort of sense. It would, like, it's the sort of thing where, like, Pikachu is Ash's starter. And if we're looking objectively, probably the strongest member of his party, barring Charizard, who wasn't listening to him. But
If anything, I feel like Gary could try to have a Graveler and a Rhydon because he's waiting for Ash to send out Pikachu and he doesn't.
he's anticipating Pikachu and it doesn't happen, so he's just like, oh well, I'll battle through. So with Kadabra, right? Psychic, turn back the Razor Leaf, the battle gets heated. Ash tries to have Bulbasaur use a sleep powder attack, but Gary sees this coming because he's learned from the past mistakes. He has Kadabra use Kinesis to lower Bulbasaur's accuracy, and the sleep powder misses, and then he finishes him off with a point blank psychic attack. So then Bulbasaur goes down, and now Ash is just left with Pidgeotto. Uh, Gary starts to has Kadabra use Thunderbolt, right? He taught him an electric move because the Abra line can learn that, and then Pidgeotto's avoiding. It uses Ash tells it to use agility, and then it buffs its speed, and then it just goes in for a quick attack and zoom because Kadabra are really frail physically. So I think one well-placed quick attack is enough to KO Kadabra, especially if Squirtle and Bulbasaur got a few licks in.
Yeah.
Like the battle had been prolonged, and Kadabra's stamina is probably waning. So then Ash has Pidgeotto use agility, avoid the Thunderbolt, avoid the psychic moves, and then quick attack, it crits, and Dapra's down. Now it's Rhydon versus Pidgeotto. In this one, Gary wins. Gary wins
Oh,
handedly
yeah.
because his
Yeah, because like even when Ash battled Giovanni's Rhydon, it was under the hand of Jesse, and he one hit KOs that Rhydon with a double edge that he learned on the spot. He
yeah.
was.
So
I like that feat, by the way, but it's a fluke. It's a fluke of a feat.
I mean, I think it was just Ash. See, here's the thing: when Ash battles with Pidgeotto in the Indigo League, like Pidgeotto's case, we know that later on Pidgeotto evolves into Pidgeot, and Ash leaves it
Hmm.
behind to go for the Orange Islands. But Pidgeotto was one of Ash's like mainstay Kanto battlers because like it wouldn't just help to find them when they were lost, like most of his birds. Pidgeotto had like presence in the battles in the Kanto days. Like he battled
Hmm.
the rat, he battled on off screen, he battled some trainers, he did a lot. So yeah,
Yeah,
Gary wins handedly here. Rhydon just
and
has the attack, the
I
defense.
I feel like because when in the original canon, when Oak tells them there's 2 months for the league, you guys need to train. Ash doesn't train. He just meets people and he wins the league matches out of luck. He doesn't train. I feel like him losing here is what prompts him to train, to actually train. And this leads to battle number 8, which is in Venus Beach. It's the Seafoam Islands of the anime, right? Because it was localized that way.
Yes.
Ash wins here because he goes to this location to train, and he brings his Krabby because Gary in the Pokecorral episode likes to one up him with having a giant Krabby, and this is where Ash's Krabby evolves into Kingler. It's not like the Mandy, the astounding battler, because Mandy was a juggler, right? Krabby doesn't evolve there in this one. He evolves in Seafoam Islands in a way, right? When they are meeting the Slowbro dude of Westwood, when they are meeting the Pika Kahuna, right? Puka, right? It's Puka and the Umanga Dunga, yeah, the surf thing, yeah. So it's around this time. It's around this time where I feel like Gary would also be training here, maybe like because every time that Gary is training, Ash is always just doing random stuff. When Ash is training, Gary is resting. So I feel like Ash would try to like, oh come on, like battle me, like I'm resting. I trained a lot already. I'm like, oh just one time, and Ash and Gary would be like, okay, fine. And we have the little Krabby against the giant Krabby, but then Krabby being Ash's, it would evolve. It would defeat Garys that could or not be the same size, if anything. How do you feel like this would go? Like having another mirror match, but one of the mons evolves, right? Because I feel like this would be something interesting, especially because they are battling in the beach, and Ash's Krabby was the impetus for Gary and this canon to explain how the Pokédex trading system works, and that's how they meet Bill. So I feel like Krabby is long due having a match with Gary, if anything. How do you feel like this would go on? Because it's just two crabs battling each other. Like crabs in the animal kingdom, they just they just use their pincers, like just not to really tear the others apart. It's just snap and fear.
I can foresee this situation coming about by like, okay, since Butterfree's no longer with the party at this point, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Ash only has five, so the three Kanto starters, Pikachu and Pidgeotto. He has a slot open. He decides to bring Krabby, probably at Misty and Brock's behest, or maybe Professor Oak suggests it because a lot of his Pokemon at the lab, while they Tauros is roaming, Muck is with Professor Oak. He isn't really doing a ton with his reserve Pokemon.
If anything, I feel like Krabby would, after Ash loses, and after all of that laboratory discussion that they are having when they're trying to measure in terms of how many Pokemon you see, how many Pokemon you catch, I feel like Krabby would join Ash, kind of like Apom or when Fampi, when they just
Yeah, he
join,
would
like,
fill the slot.
yeah, like, hey man, I'll fill the slot, don't worry about it.
Yeah, so Krabby shows up as like the sixth member up till the league, like from now till the Indigo League.
Yeah, it's basically
Um,
you're going to the beach, bet.
okay, so it kind of fills a similar role to like what Snorunt did in AG.
Yeah, yeah.
So
um
okay, I can see that. So the way this battle goes, uh, I could foresee a situation where Gary's just there to relax because like if we were to compare their training and battling methods, Gary's like the honor student who's always like getting his homework done ahead of time and did the reading not the night before, but like the week it was assigned. Gary's like the honor student who gets the reading done ahead of time, already got the assignment done, and already started on the next segment, like the next chapter, next week's material. He's already reading ahead. Ash is the kind of person who's always like playing catch up. He's procrastinated. He's he's
but yeah,
left
yeah,
in.
yeah, but in this situation, like, because I feel like the Gary would train on a regular basis because Ash doesn't, at least in Kanto. To catch up to Gary, he has to pump iron and go to high gear. The moment Gary wants to rest, Ash insists to battle, so Gary doesn't perform that much well. And because Ash is always, making more effort, it feels
Yeah,
like it's boosting his confidence in a fallacious way, right? Because like, yeah, like my hard work is paying off. Like, yes and no, it's always about circumstance, and I feel like this will be, oh, I won with evolving, unlike how it happened with Charmeleon, right? It will be something
I
around
mean,
those
yeah,
lines.
Ash certainly does have like the beginner's luck factor for himself a lot in Indigo. He either gets really lucky or like things just align to provide him the victory.
Yeah,
Not to take away from his capability. I mean, Gary's certainly not perfect either, but like with Ash, it felt like he definitely lucked his way out of a lot of situations he probably
yeah.
shouldn't have won. But like that's the thing about Pokemon training, right? He's an amateur trainer. He's just getting his bearings. He's learning still. But I can
Mm-hmm.
foresee this being a situation where in Bennett's Beach, right? Gary spent the morning training with his Krabby, right?
Yeah.
His big Krabby. He asked for Professor Oak to have it, takes it to the beach, they train a bit, and then once he's gotten his training done in the morning, he's probably like, I don't know, enjoying some lunch, he's with his cheerleaders, he's just like resting on a beach chair, like a pull-out chair. And
Yeah.
then Ash and Brock show up, and Ash immediately clocks Gary, and he's like, you, me, battle now. And then Gary's like,
Especially since it's at a sunset when Ash met his Krabby, so it would be like thematically fitting, and
yeah,
it would be something around the lines of my Krabby evolved because I trained him, and with that I defeated Gary. So it means that this is working, right? So it gives Ash confidence, but in a very false way, and this is where it leads to the actual league. the Kanto Region Indigo League. Match number 9 of this part, right? So, this is where things get interesting because Gary would win the top 32 and he would face Ash. He would face Ash on the top 16, right? And unlike unlike in the games where the protagonist defeats the rival and to become the champion, this doesn't happen here. Ash loses. Ash loses against Gary. There's no Team Rocket shenanigans. They eventually meet Richie. They will eventually meet Richie. And Ash is using Pikachu. And I wanted to have Muck here simply because I wanted for all of Ash's Kantomons to at least fight Gary once. Primeape was an example, Butterfree was an example. Krabby and Tauros were an example. Ash would lose this fight. It's the top 16 fight, but it's not. It's when Ash is meant to face Richie, he faces Gary. Maybe they meet Richie in a way, but the luck of the draw happens with this, and I feel like they realize they need to go full power. And I picked these mons. How do you feel like this would happen?
So, I noticed that Ash is finally using Pikachu against Gary. It makes sense to use in Ash's first battle using Pikachu against Gary. It's in the Indigo League. It's very fitting.
Yeah, like
Gary's
never no
Pikachu yet.
It's basically no holding back. I have to use my secret weapon now. It's do or die for Ash.
So, okay, if I strictly go off of the order of the lineup, so I think Pikachu takes care of Pinsir. Because of the electric moves and Pikachu's speed. Pinsir may get a lick in here or there, but I don't think Pinsir's well equipped enough to deal with Pikachu. Pinsir's strong, that's surely, but there are more things than just having strength. So Pinsir would lose. Gary would then bring out Arcanine,
which is faster.
Which would beat Pikachu because Arcanine's faster, but it's also got fire moves, and Gary spent a lot of time with his Growlithe. So it evolving here makes a lot of sense prior to the Indigo League, so Pikachu goes down. Then it's Muck. I can actually foresee Arcanine and Muck taking each other out. Maybe it's the sort of situation where like a well-placed Sludge attack or Ash uses like Minimize or Body Slam. They're going to like chip each other away.
Arcanine. It's going to be the other way around. Arcanine is going to use an Ash tactic by being brute force, while Ash is going to try to chip away damage with Minimize and Toxic. So it's like maybe Arcanine defeats Muck, but it goes down because of status. It goes down because of poison. Yeah.
Yeah. So they take each other out, and then they're left with Blastoise and Charizard. Now, this doesn't go the same way as the Johto League because at this stage, I think that Gary's Blastoise is newly evolved. Like, I like to think that Gary's Wartortle evolved into Blastoise at Cinnabar against Blaine. Right? Maybe when it was facing its Magmar or something.
So in a way, Charizard leapfrogged the evolutionary stages, but because of that, there's a drawback.
Yeah, no, Charizard evolved far too soon, leading to the disobedience. He evolved when Ash had less badges, so that led to the personality problem, like him thinking like, oh, I'm so much better than Ash, or what am I doing with this weak trainer? Whereas with Gary, he maintained the consistency. He evolved Squirtle into Wartortle and Blastoise as he should have, right? Like, he did it. He measured out his Squirtle's experience and made sure he didn't get too strong too soon.
Yeah. And how do you feel like this battle would go out? Because the battlefield would be a plain battlefield. There will be no grass, no rock, no fire, not fire, no water and no ice.
It would be a basic battlefield.
It would be a basic battlefield.
Just flat ground.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way that this goes radically different than the Johto battle. Like, at this stage, these two trainers and those two Pokemon aren't as experienced as their Johto counterparts. What would happen in that situation?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the battle starts with, well, first, Charizard's not listening to Ash. It's similar to like the Richie battle, right? He's just
Yeah.
like slumped up on the ground, leaning on his head on his hand and yawning. And then Gary just like he comments on that to Ash, is like, Ash, you brought a disobedient Pokemon to like a match of the Indigo League. How what are you thinking?
Yeah,
He,
because
he,
in the end of the day, like Richie didn't know Ash, so he was caught off by surprise. If anything, Gary feels insulted. I feel like Charizard would try to rest, and Gary's like, Blastoise, attack him. So it will
Oh
be a
yeah, no,
situation.
Gary would prompt it. Yeah, Gary would feel like, no, I'm owed a battle. Charizard's your strongest besides Pikachu. If this is our 1v1 to decide it, I'm not winning this. Like, I'm not even gonna
By a
rip it.
disobedience technicality.
Yeah, yeah. I don't care that Charizard's not listening to you. Gary would feel like I'm owed this. I trained to get here. I know what you're capable of and our rivalry. So like I need to if I gotta bring it out of Charizard, I will. So he probably commands like
because
a water gun.
because let's face it, even in the Diamond and Pearl series, if Electivire didn't shit talk Infernape would have not activated Blaze.
I know, right? It was the deep-seated rivalry. So I can foresee a situation where like Gary commands Blastoise to use like a water gun attack and douses Charizard and gets it angry. So then it's similar to like what happens in Cinnabar Island or in the Pokemon the first movie, where a situation is induced to like Charizard knows who Gary is. Like he's Ash's biggest rival at that stage. He's had battles with his Pokemon. Charizard knows who Gary is and what he's about. So he sees Blastoise, is like, okay, you're that Squirtle. Like, huh, you've caught, we're in the same evolutionary stage. Okay, maybe you're worth a challenge. So getting doused with the water gun, Ash is like, Charizard, please, it's the league. You gotta help me. He probably considers that he sees like the caliber of Pokemon that Gary's raising and where they are. So like, Charizard probably decides in that moment to help Ash, well, to battle. He starts listening to Ash, but only because he wants a good fight. It's momentary.
You know what I feel like it could also happen in this situation is, Gary commanding Blastoise to use Water Gun. It makes sense because it's not a stronger it's not a strong water move, but it's basically Gary telling Ash, well, I cannot force you to fight because I can also get disqualified, but I'm going to use Squirtle level moves on your Charizard to basically make your Charizard realize you're not worth of being hit by a Bubble Beam or a Water Pulse or a Hydro Pump or something around those lines.
Yeah, yeah, it's a warning shot.
Yeah, I feel like Blastoise using the cannons, he would try to hit at Charizard, but not in a way that it's just hitting for the sake of hitting. Maybe try to hit weak points. Like for example, maybe hitting the wings, and when Charizard yawns, the wings just curl up, not curl up. They just they just deflate.
Down.
They fall down, and one of the water guns that it's meant to hit the wing, it hits the tail. And that's when Charizard gets pissed because it's like, no, water on my tail, never again. Like if Gary was Paul, I feel like he would try to use the trauma of Charizard and try to hit the tail as hard as he could from the like. If it was Paul, he would do it intentionally. With Gary, it was an accident because he was aiming for the wings. Like, hey, it's a Charizard, it's a Fire Mon, but it's also a Flying Mon. If I douse the wings, it's gonna make him a little heavy, right? Maybe he could use maybe Gary could use Ice Beam because Charizard back then he had no resistance to ice, like because fire was not resistant to ice back then, so Ice Beam is super effective, trying to freeze the wings. Maybe try to do like the Poliwrath strategy, but earlier, and Charizard's Burning Spear just melts it down.
Yeah, I can see Gary's Blasters knowing Ice Beam. It makes
Yeah,
sense. Gary seems like the sort of trainer who would use TMs.
and for
Um,
grass coverage too. I feel like Blastoise will be strong enough to learn Dig, like just spin and try to learn Dig, even though it would not hit Charizard.
Would have learned it in the War Turtle stage.
Yeah, but yeah, I feel like Ash loses this battle, but it's not just because of
Close.
it's not because of early disobedience, but it's very evident that it's by a hair. Like I feel like Gary and Blastoise have more synergy and teamwork because they are first partners. Charizard has brute force, but without Ash's proper guidance, it's like you have power, but you also have pride.
Yeah, Charizard's very unfocused. It's like it's trying to win on its own, and it's only out listening to Ash out of like necessity because it needs to be able to like it needs to show that it's at least listening, hearing Ash out. Otherwise, the ref would probably disqualify the battle.
Yeah. So I feel like this would be a situation where they would look at each other and Charizard would, fall down like how he did against Blaziken in the actual canon. So Gary would go to the top 8 and Ash would mourn his loss, and then all the situation would happen like in the locker room or even in the trainers' huts or whatever, like with Misty, Brock, Oak, Delia, right? Because Oak and Delia would also be watching the match, right? Just give me a moment, okay? Just like 1 minute. Let's just do a small intermission, okay?
Sure.
Okay. Give me just 1 moment. All right then, and we are back. I just had to, fill my bottle with water because talking, I need to hydrate.
Oh yeah, no, same. I got some here too.
All right. So funny that the intermission happened in the middle of the saga. So after these 9 Kanto badges, not Kanto badges, battles ended, Gary would face Richie in a full match. It's Gary's first full match, and he would lose. He would lose. And the explanation is obvious. In this reality, Richie would tell Ash and Gary that before coming to Kanto, he trained in the Orange Islands and he was in the Hall of Fame at the Palace of Victory by defeating, Drake. So you hype up Drake extremely early and you hype up full battles, 6v6s also extremely early. So Richie shows that he has more he has more experience because he did a beta league prior. This would maybe inspire Gary to, face more people. Maybe Gary would also go to the Orange Islands. Maybe he would do something else. Ash would, to align with the canon. I feel like Gary would also need some time out so that Ash can reflect on himself and also with Charizard. How do you feel when it comes to Ash and Gary's battle? How do you feel about, Ash's side of the story of having Misty, Brock, Delia, and Oak talk with him? And how do you feel about Gary's side of the story in terms of defeating Ash, basically proving that he was right since day one, but then losing to a newcomer that he had no idea of, but it also expands his worldview because Oak is watching. His cheerleaders are also, there. How do you feel in terms of character interaction? This would prompt both of them.
How it would affect Ash and Gary?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's start with Gary, right? So he's probably like fresh off of his like Gary would probably be feeling very much like how Ash would be, like he when in Johto, right? In the Johto anime, when he beat Gary, but then lost to Harrison, it's like, okay, you've climbed up a step, but then someone knocked you down a peg. So it would be probably a little more meaningful for Gary than for Ash when it happened to him, because you have to remember, so Gary beating Ash here in an official league match, Gary never really vocalizes it, but Oak states it. Gary considers Ash to be a really close friend and a good rival because outside of all the other people in Palatown and even most gym leaders, nobody really gives Gary the same kind of push that Ash does.
Yeah.
Like he's always chasing after him. He's always asking for a battle, and they're always like comparing and measuring each other up. But like it's very, it's almost like when Ash has to like battle Team Rocket to get to grind EXP.
Mm-hmm.
In this situation you've concocted, I feel like Gary's gotten a lot of his like experience and training and methods from like interacting with Ash. So Gary would be ecstatic to beat Ash in an official setting, a 6-on-6 match in a league battle, and then he would try and take that forward. But then losing to Richie would put it into perspective that he's not the strongest trainer in the region, much less the world. It would open up the fact that like I mean, Gary probably thought in the back of his mind that there were stronger trainers out there. After all, there are champions, Elite Four members, older, more experienced people who have more badges than him. But it doesn't really set it until he actually tastes defeat in that
Yeah.
way. So, and it's doubly worse because if Professor Oak's there in the stands and he sees Gary's loss, that hits Gary especially bad because it's like, I lost it from my grandpa. That
And
he's like this
and he's
professor of
lost
the Kanto region.
and he's lost his first 6v6.
So I could foresee a situation where this. Plus, I think Ash, Misty, and Brock hang around to see Gary and Richie's battle.
Yeah, they
They're in the
do.
stands. They see who's
They
going.
do. They see Richie's battle and they see Gary's too. Like even in the canon, they see it. We don't see it, sadly, but they see it.
So I'd imagine there's probably like a scene where Gary's going back to the locker room, and like Ash, Professor Oak, Misty, Brock, and Delia are all there waiting for Gary, and they congratulate him on getting that far, and like Ash tells Gary like not to sweat it, that they'll both be stronger for the next league and try and like perk Gary up. And then Professor Oak like, probably comes to Gary and tells him like actually this would be a great moment for like Professor Oak to share some wisdom with Ash and Gary. He probably like reveals like we know Professor Oak was a trainer in his youth, right? The Celebi movie it implies as much. But
Yeah, and Oak had a Charmeleon, so
yes, he probably has a Charizard, and from the Pokemon Master of Mirage special, we know he also has a Dragonite. So his Pokemon are probably off in his field somewhere or on his person. But he probably shares with like Ash and Gary. I can envision a situation where like, do you remember when Delia told Ash when Ash got to Viridian City that like he got there faster than his dad did when he went? Something
yeah.
like that. That dumb luck.
I feel like Delia would tell Ash, "Hey, honey, listen. Losing is part of life, but at least there's the best in the worst situation. You lost to someone you knew, right? Because that's kind of like I feel like retroactively that's a crux of Ash's character. He always loses to random people who just show
Yeah,
up.
the folks he just met or just started to be acquainted with. The
No,
Syndicate doesn't hurt him much.
no will against Richie. I
Yeah,
love no will against Richie. If anything, Richie was also robbed of a good fight with Ash because of Team Rocket.
true. But yeah, no, I think in this situation, Ash doesn't take losing to Gary as hard because he did his best and the match was close. If it wasn't for Charizard's disobedience, he might have gotten the victory. But I think Ash is able to sit with this because he knows how much effort Gary's been putting into it as well. So it's like, okay, if it's you, I can accept this. And then Professor will probably share some knowledge like, oh, when I was you boys' age, I didn't make it nearly as far my first go around at the Indigo League. So like that'd probably take them both by surprise.
No,
Both the fact
you know what Oak could say. This okay, so this is going back to the other matches because they battle they Ash and Gary they battle in a plain battlefield, not in an environmental battlefield against each other.
yeah,
I feel like they could say something around the lines of maybe Oak could say like the environment plays a key role. Like if you guys battled in a water battlefield, maybe Gary would have an advantage early on because of Blastoise. If you guys didn't, if you battle in a rocky battlefield, maybe Arcanine would not be able to be as fast as he was. So it's all like it's trying to give both of the boys perspectives, right? Maybe even Richie could, tell them something because he also has experiences with this. I feel like the Kanto League, one thing that they should have done, all the leagues should have done this in my opinion. I love how Alola did it. Alola had no environmental battlefields, but the Kahunas are the referees. I feel like the Elite Four of Kanto should have been the referees. It's a cool way to debut them earlier. For the rock battle,
Bruno.
like
Yeah.
Lorelei for the ice, Bruno for the rock, Agatha for the grass, and Lance for the water. So when Ash is battling Mandy, Lance is the one seeing him. When he's battling Jeanette Fisher, Agatha is the one seeing him, right? So I feel like it's a cool way, and maybe the referees are always interchanging. For example, one Elite Four referees top 16, the other the top 8, the other top 4, the other the finals, right? Maybe Agatha is the referee for them. I feel like Agatha would be a cool referee for Ash and Gary, or maybe it would be Bruno. Bruno being a referee for Ash and Gary, and then Agatha being a referee for Gary and Richie. I feel like that could have worked better because Bruno and Gary, no, Bruno knows Ash and Gary in this one. Maybe he heard of them because of the Grand Prix, and Agatha knows Gary because of Professor Oak. So can you imagine Agatha having to referee the match of Oak's grandson, and Oak's grandson loses? So like, I feel like if that factor alone could probably make Gary think not twice but thrice.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure on the guy. I'm sure that'll lead to some good character development. My question is, after beating Gary and advancing, now in this situation, in this scenario, Richie had gone to the Orange League. You said, wait, he beat Drake in here, right?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
Orange Island League champion.
he before he came to Kanto, he was here. I feel like he would not lose to Asunta in the top 4 in this one. I want to tell myself, because this is basically a reboot of the story. Let's say that the other 3 trainers are Blanche, Spark, and Candela from Pokemon Go.
Okay, yeah, cancer trainers.
Yeah, they
I
are
want,
Kanto trainers, exactly.
I want to say, even though Richie in this situation would have been an Orange League champion, there's not much discrepancy between the Indigo League and the Orange League. I feel like they're like equivalent in terms of like how strong their people are, because
Yeah.
when watching the Orange Island League, I don't think for a moment that any of the Orange League gym leaders are stronger than any of the Kanto gym leaders. I never get that impression. I feel
No,
like they're on par.
they are there to basically forge bond, relationship, teamwork, and synergy. Because like Richie would tell them, "Hey, the Orange League works this way," and Ash is like, "If that's the case, I need to focus on my bond with my Pokemon, especially Charizard. I'm going there to see what I can do." Gary, maybe he would think of, so the gyms are not even battle focused, so what's the point? And Richie's like, I defeated you. That's the point.
Like, yeah, I went there and did that, and I beat you. So what's that say?
The Orange Islands for Richie is like a trial test, if anything.
So I don't know. I want to say that I see Richie losing at the top 2 in the Indigo League. I don't see him, even though he won the Orange League, that doesn't necessarily guarantee. It'd be like the sort of thing where like he he peaks, right? So beating Drake and like his Dragonite, right? That doesn't mean there aren't any stronger trainers. Like what if Richie in the finals of the Indigo League fights a ringer? Maybe someone using a legendary Pokemon or someone who's been at this for 10 years, right? Like
No,
to get
that's
to the
that
finals, you
no,
need a certain amount of experience.
exactly, because like, let's say it's one of the trainers from Pokemon Go. They have a legendary bird, and they are adults. I feel like
But
I feel like that could have worked. Not to mention that if Oak tells Ash and Gary, when I was your age, I lost in the first round, and then Gary was like, "Were you that bad, Grandpa?" No, I lost to the guy who won the whole thing. I had the unlucky draw.
yeah, no, that would make a lot of sense because like for one thing, from what we know of Professor Oak's childhood and like his upbringing, like he's not a bad trainer by any metric. We see in the Celebi movie he has a Charmeleon and he has a Dragonite, he catches a Rotom later in BW. He knows a lot about Pokemon, so he must be at least capable with Pokemon. He probably just explains to Gary and Ash, like, yeah, I didn't get as far ahead as you guys in my first league, but when I later rematched them on my second or maybe third time around, I won the whole thing.
You know who could have defeated Gary? Not Gary. Oak. You know who could have defeated Oak?
Agatha?
Either Agatha or Price. But probably
I,
Agatha. Probably Agatha. Like, Price was not invented yet.
I can see a world where Lance beats Oak.
Yeah, I can see that too. So, after informing them about the Orange Islands, this is where Pokemon Johto. So Ash returns on the Orange
Yeah,
Islands, and this is battle number 10. They tie in this one. In this one, they tie. Ash uses the starters and Pikachu, and Gary uses 3 normal types. How do you feel like this battle would go?
hmm. Okay. Considering that this is post Orange Island, so Pikachu's rocking with Thunder, it's probably gone similarly to what happens in the Orange Island anime, right? He beats Drake, beats Dragonite, gets the trophy. All of his Pokemon like put in some effort. Bulbasaur got some good grinding during those days. He took a lot of punishment. His fight with Electabuzz is still fresh in my mind. I remember that fight.
I remember that
Um,
fight too because it's the only one. It's the only match that Ash loses in that fight. Like, I hate when that Ash never gets one individual win each in 6v6. It's like, man, it started with Bulbasaur.
yeah, no, it was just Drake. They even mentioned it like Drake's Electabuzz was a higher level,
Yeah.
which means like
I
I,
do I do like Drake's team because Drake's team it's like he has a Ditto, so it's like a nod to Fuji and Professor Oak in a way. Onyx it's because of Bruno, Gengar because of Agatha, Dragonite because of Drake. Uh, Ash has Lapras, so it's a nod to Lorelei, and he had a Venusaur that's a nod to the rival, right? Because no one had a Venusaur at this point. And he has Electabuzz, that's a Mon that Gary and Paul have an evolution of, but the rival in the stadium games is an Electabuzz. So I like his team. Funny enough, I feel like
it's
Drake's.
composed very well.
Yeah, it's very well composed, yeah.
Okay, if this is Ash fresh off of Orange Islands, Pikachu's pretty strong here. Bulbasaur got Bulbasaur didn't have too good a showing in the Orange League match against Drake, but against the gym leaders he did fairly well. So Bulbasaur's solid here, and
And
Squirtle has
and and
Hydro Pump.
and he knows Solar Beam.
True. And then Squirtle picked up Hydro Pump. Plus, Squirtle got a lot of prominence in the Orange Islands, considering he had to do those team ups with the Wartortle and Blastoise firefighter squads, right?
Yeah.
During those. And like he got a lot of swim time too during the Orange Islands, so I think that improved them as a water type. Gary's team, on the other hand,
Gary's using
and
brand new mons. Ash is using the ones he has, ones he's familiar with. Gary is using brand new mons.
I understand Dodrio because Gary uses it in Chronicles. It's in his reserve, and I believe we see him use it once or twice proper. So I understand Dodrio. Spearow, now that's a callback if I ever seen one because remember Ash and Pikachu's first day what went down with the Spearow and what happened before Ash released Pidgeot? Like they were attacked by the group of Spearow, and that same Spearow who pecked him evolved into that Fearow.
Yeah.
Actually, no, for wouldn't it be a coincidence if Gary caught that same Fearow?
I feel like it could be the same Firo because it's like he's not gonna bother the Pidgeot ever again. Like Pidgeot, they flew around the world and then they came back. Yeah, I feel like it could be the same Firo.
If
Like
Gary was going around Kanto training,
maybe he has like a scar under the eye or something.
yeah, distinctive feature. So Ash recognizes it as that same Spearow, and then the Fearow just
Yeah.
grins at Ash. Maliciously is like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm a Pokemon of your rival now. Take that.
I
I,
I feel like this would not be an impetus for PGO to return early. Like that would not happen. I feel like Firo, because Firo in Generation One it has Mirror Move, right? Mirror Move, right? So it's like, hey, you face the Ditto. So what happens if you face a Mon that doesn't transform but still has the moves, right? Um, I feel like it would be something extremely interesting for Gary to utilize. Like, okay, I'm going to use a Firo, like, because when he battled Charizard, he see that Charizard battled the best when he's under pressure. So it's like, let's see what happens if Pikachu battles, especially because Firo, it's one of the like the first POV that we have of a Pokemon. It's Spiros, and he sees in black and white, and it's always something that always intrigued me because we see POVs of other Pokemon and it's always in colors. And in the back of my mind, I always believed, was Spearo's POV in black and white because they wanted for Pokemon to be more animal, so they made them see in black and white, or was Spearow just one and only and they didn't fought back to it? Like, regardless of the situation, like, I feel like Gary would be intrigued of training a Mon that doesn't see color.
I mean, yeah, yeah. The Gary has unique captures. He likes to, like you said, he's caught like 60 different species, and he caught 60 different species in the Reason of Firo, if he never did that before, would be interesting. He's probably doing this to like sort of experiment, you know?
Yeah, I can see, for example, Bulbasaur trying to tangle the vines on Dodrio's heads. Maybe Spearow has the advantage on Bulbasaur, defeats him. Squirtle tries to, perfect the aim of Hydro Pump, defeats Spearow. Maybe it's tired, Eevee takes Squirtle easily, and then Pikachu comes for Eevee. And then they are on the same wavelength. And that would make the tie happen. So I feel like it would. If anything, I feel like Bulbasaur would be a cool lead, like, because hey, Gary got a new Mon, but Bulbasaur's unique traits, case in point, the vines circling around, not really strangling Dodrio, that would be, but it would take the advantage. I feel like this would be a cool, like, okay, we're back on track. We have another draw, so let's go to Johto, and when they go to Johto, Battle 11, Battle number 2 of Johto, it will be in Sprout Tower. And it will be in Sprout Tower. I feel like, it's a location that would make sense for them to, visit, in terms of Pokemon Enlightenment and whatever. And instead of Ash battling Shingo Caesar, he would battle Gary's Caesar. So he's familiar with this Caesar, right? He's familiar
The
with
same
this.
Scyther.
It's the same Scyther, exactly. And he has Heracross, his first Johto capture. So it's like, hey, if I'm going to battle Gary and Johto, I have to battle him with the first Mon I caught here. And Ash wins. I feel like the battle could be the same as Shingo's. The difference is it's Gary, so it matters more because it's Gary. Nothing against Shingo. He was the first Smogon player in Pokemon anime.
Yeah, he had the computer and the stats, and he calculated all the possible strategies. I think, hmm, Gary's Scizor at this stage would probably be equivalent to Shingo's.
Yeah,
Um, Ash,
especially because I'm trying to, like, Gary using Caesar here. It's making the debut of Steel types.
yeah, yeah. So Gary probably got a metal coat somewhere and traded it and got it evolved. Again, Ash's Heracross beats Gary Scizor in a similar vein to what happened with Shingo's. It's just that Heracross is sturdier. Ironically enough, considering that Scizor's a steel type, Scizor's more known for like being fast and swift and knowing more
Yeah, and
complex moves.
I feel like in this battle they need to be a more aerodynamic because they are in Violet City. So Faulkner will be watching the match. Like, he's seeing two bugs flying around. It would be a cool impetus for them to go to Azalea next because of bug gyms, right? But yeah, like Faulkner seeing a Caesar and a Heracross battling in the sky, not just trying to battle in the land. I feel like it would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going back a few episodes later, like we pass we pass Azalea, we pass Goldenrod. This would be the other match. It will be in the Ruins of Elf. And this will be Ash's second win in Johto in a row. So Ash's battle record, it's giving him more W's than L's at this point. But you can see why. Because now Gary is debuting the Dark types with, Houndoom and Houndoom and Umbreon. So this is interesting to me because I wanted to make a Dark type, a Fire type, and a Dark Fire type. And Ash now is using Pikachu that would be the one to get the win on Umbreon. He's using, Snorlax that against Arcanine I feel it would be a cool idea to utilize. He has Chikorita, and this is the battle where Chikorita evolves. Instead of evolving in a random power plant because of Team Rocket shenanigans, Chikorita being burned to a crisp because of a Houndoom, to the point that she has to evolve and muster and try to body slam Houndoom. It's one of those. It's a very weird battle because the Chikorita would evolve in the first round, but the win would go to Pikachu. It's kind of like what happened in Castilia, where Swaddle becomes Swadloon, but it's not the one that gets the whole W in the fight. But I feel like battling in the ruins of Elf would be interesting. Like, I feel like it's a cool place to show dark Pokemon because of Unknown are there, and it's also a very mysterious landmark.
I mean, yeah, no, it would make sense, and Gary would probably be there trying to do research on the unknown, the ancient history of the Johto region. Like, that's the thing. I'd always been interested about like what Gary had been doing on the leg of his Johto journey, because with Ash and the others, we get to see that. They get to find out, oh, there are brand new Johto Pokemon, or like, hey, these are Johto evolutions of existing Pokemon. Like they get really interested when they find out, like, oh, yeah, no, Scyther evolves into Scizor, or Onyx can become Steelix, or hey, Brock's Golbat became a Crobat. Like that always fascinated them because they were still learning about the Johto Pokemon while they're in the region. With Gary, I always felt like he went there. We know eventually he becomes a Pokemon researcher, right? He's trying to follow in the footsteps of his grandpa, but he's also still a trainer. So he's balancing both. Um, him like evolving his Eevee into an Umbreon shows that. Like, okay, I got the Eevee, but I didn't go with any of the 3 Kanto evolutions. This is the Johto region, so I'm going to use this Dark type. Or like with Houndoom, right? Probably caught a Houndour, or maybe he caught it as a Houndoom. I can see Gary being the sort of person who could catch a Pokemon already evolved so that he has more time to train it.
Yeah, and in the back of my mind, because I'm seeing this battle, right? So I feel like, for example, Chikorita battles Houndoom. Ash is surprised by a Darkmon. Chikorita musters because of her love for Ash, evolves, defeats Houndoom. Arcanine defeats Arcanine defeats Bayleaf. Snorlax defeats Arcanine. And then maybe Umbreon tries to, or maybe Arcanine and Snorlax they tie, and then Pikachu defeats Umbreon. Like, so Ash finally gets the one up on Gary. I feel like Snorlax being the roadblocker and Arcanine being the legendary having a tie, it would make sense because a lot of attack and speed and a lot of defense and HP, so they balance each other in terms of what they can face against or not. Chikorita losing to Arcanine, it's a good impetus. No, Bayleaf, because it's evolving in this one. Bayleaf losing to Arcanine, it's a cool idea that I had, because that way, when they have the race for the egg, Bayleaf would defeat Arcanine at their own game, being a game of speed, right? And Ash would get the Fampi egg, but at the same time, I feel like Gary would try to reach out to someone who also has a Pokemon egg. In this reality, because Misty got Togepi, I feel like Brock would be the one to have Larvitar, because Brock is owned a Pokemon egg, right? So I feel like it would be a lot more sense for Brock to be the one to take care of Larvitar, so that Ash can focus on Fampi. So he battles with Fampi a lot earlier, because he boxes Bulbasaur earlier, and he basically rotates Fampi, Heracross, and Noctowl. He still has the starters around. Which means that Gary would have to find another avenue to get a Pokemon Egg, and this is where new rivalry would be born. We would have a new tournament. It's not the Sand End tournament. Now we have the Battle Tower tournament in Olivine City, and Ash and Gary would be in the finals of this tournament, and this is where new rivalry would, start. That being of Ash's Fampi against, Gary's Tyrogue, and this would be another draw. I feel like it's important to, at least establish these new captures, right? If anything, it shows that Gary is not, afraid of raising a Pokemon fresh from an egg, right? And being Tyrogue, a Pokemon that has a lot of potential, I feel like it would, make sense. Especially because they are in Johto, it will become a Hitmontop, so it spins sideways while Donphan spins frontwards. They have different methods and directions of spinning. I feel like it's a cool idea, right? At least I thought about it that way. Like, they are just in a local tournament, just having fun, and their babies, they show the same amount of potential. Now, the next battle, it's gonna be Ash's loss in the next one. It's because it's in Whirl Islands. Ash doesn't lose to Misty. I feel like, if anything, Misty could beat Gary afterwards. So it would be a realization for Gary, Ash's companion defeated me. Because, like, Misty defeating Ash in a water tournament when Ash kinda didn't have any business being there, I don't know, it always felt kinda weird. But I feel like this match kinda needs to happen, where Gary has these 3 water types. Gyarados, Kingdra was in the PC box, and Gyarados, it's a nod to the rival in the games. Ash would use his other mons, and this is where things change a bit. Because I feel like this would be the battle where Squirtle would become a War Turtle, to be the leader of the squad. So it's like trying to... Do you feel... Because I'm trying to make Gary use Blastoise out of the blue, and Ash wants to use Squirtle out of the blue as well, and Squirtle evolves to prove his worth to Blastoise. Maybe this would be because Gary is using Blastoise here, and I don't want for Totodile or for Kingler to defeat Blastoise before Charizard does. I feel like this would be a battle where Gary sweeps Ash by always interchanging Pokemon. Like, he sends out Squirtle, Blastoise wins, recalls, he sends out Kingler, maybe Kingler and Gyarados have a draw, and then Ash sends out Totodile, and Totodile defeats Kingdra, like how he does with that one trainer, right? By biting on Kingdra, but then Blastoise smacks Totodile. I feel like that could happen. There's a lot here, because Gary is using other types of moves. Like, Ash has only pure water types, Gary has a flying and a dragon. And debatably a steel type, because I feel like if they... Why didn't they never make Blastoise part steel in Generation 2?
Yeah, no, such a missed opportunity. Kuro, can we take an intermission? I have to look at something for a couple minutes.
Oh, sure thing, man. Take your time.
Okay, I'm back.
Hello. Okay, so
Hmm.
especially with this match, I'm realizing something now. Blastoise still has Ice Beam, so he would cover the world.
Every
Yeah,
everyone here's a water type.
yeah,
That's you know me. You know me. Navy
yeah.
Suicune, I water is my favorite type, so I have thoughts about this. First off, I love that it's at the World Cup. Gary not being at the World Cup is such a missed opportunity, considering that his starter is a water type, and he
Mm-hmm.
had a Kingdra, and I can totally see Gyarados is like a Garymon,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
that would totally fit his roster. So that's such a missed opportunity. Plus,
I
consider
I feel like what would happen here is that Gary beating Ash and then losing to Misty,
yeah,
Misty would not defeat Blastoise. Misty will not steal that from Ash. If anything, we see more of Gary's Mons because we know he has a Krabby, so he probably has other Water Mons, right?
probably has
So
his own Kingler by this point.
yeah,
If
he would
Ash
have
has Kingler,
he
Gary probably
Gary
won't
would
pick
probably have
that.
his own Kingler. Maybe Gary has like a Noctillery and a
Oh,
Tentacruel. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like
I
it,
could see Gary with a Cloyster, honestly.
oh yeah, a Cloyster. Oh,
Just like his in-game counterpart.
yeah, because he has a Cloyster in yellow. That's true. Yo, Cloyster and Tentacruel would actually work. Yeah, like
Yeah, it's very defensive. It knows ice moves.
yeah, and I feel like it would be cool. Like for example, Ash is battling. No, Gary faces Ash, so it's like I'm facing Ash in this tournament. I'm not in the last tournament. I used my recent mon in the last fight because I wanted to fight even. Now it's not the exact place to fight even. I have to fight Ash with my stronger mons, and because of that, when he fights Misty, he has to use the weaker roster because his aces are resting, so he loses because of that. But I feel like it would be an interesting interaction regardless. Like being in the World Cup, and it's basically like in the tournaments of Best Wishes where the companions defeat the rivals of Ash and Ash defeats the rivals of the companions. So everyone is on equal footing. That's what I want to make Johto be. And
Yeah,
I feel like that could work, like because hey, Kingler ties with Gyarados, Squirtle evolves, so Ash gets Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Charizard, War Turtle, Charizard. A lot of people wanted Ivysaur, and I'm like, I get it, but at the same time, Super Smash Brawl wasn't a thing yet, so and Totodile defeating Kingdra, it still shows Gary. Oh, this Totodile is built different. What the hell?
yeah, no, Gary's probably had a lot of trainers have this in the show and in the games. A lot of trainers tend to have like some sort of like evolutionary hierarchy or supremacy sort of thing where it's like, oh yeah, an evolved Pokemon is just better because they're stronger, they learn better moves, they're at a different stage. But it's like, by virtue of Ash not evolving his Pokemon, they learn moves sooner that they wouldn't have if they had just evolved immediately. Like Ash's Totodile eventually getting Hydro Pump, his Bayleaf having Body Slam, like that's all the sort of thing
I
that you get in
I feel
stages.
I feel like by this point, like realistically, Totodile should have not known Bite. I feel like maybe at this point he should have known Crunch and maybe Ice
Yeah.
Punch. Maybe Ice Punch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So going on to another battle. This would be match number 15. Yeah, match 15. This is match number 6 of Johto. This is in the Brass Tower. When they return from Olivine and they meet, Eugene, right? This would be another Ash win. This would be Cyndaquil against Gary Skarmory. So it's kind of like how when Ash battled that trainer called Miki, I think it's her name, with Skarmory. So it's that battle, but it's Gary. Gary is replacing the characters of the day here. And Cyndaquil battled 5 out of the 8 gyms of Johto. Cyndaquil was robbed of an evolution back then. So I want for Cyndaquil to evolve in this fight. I feel like battling in the Brass Tower would be cool because of Ho-Oh and Entei, and I think it would just be a cool 1v1 match, just so that Ash evolves his Mon in a more significant rate. Don't you agree?
I think so since the Brass Tower's an egg critique, And if I remember correctly, when they come back, they meet up with Morty and Eugene, right? Because of
Yeah.
the whole Sweet Coon thing. I have thoughts.
Yeah, this would be Ash evolving Cyndaquil after defeating Jasmine, but before fighting Price.
Okay, so it's post Olivine but pre-Mahogany. That's the timeline. Um, So, I have opinions about this. First off, for the lead up, I think so. Ash, Misty, and Brock go to Ecruteak. They probably see like Gary. I could just envision Gary just having like a little like tourist book, or maybe he's going through his Pokedex, and he's just like I can see him going to like one of the food stalls in Ecruteak, and he's just eating some food and he's probably reading like an old lore book about like Ecruteak's history and trying to
You
figure out stuff about the legendary
you
beasts.
know what they could have done? Gary visits the Kimono Girls because he wants to teach Umbreon maybe a specific move, and that's Sakura's rite of passage. And
Ooh.
Sakura evolves Eevee into an Espeon because of Gary, so she would lose. She would lose, but at least her Eevee finally evolves, and it's because of Gary. So it shows that Ash is not the only one. Ash and the gang are not the only ones making a change in the world.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of Gary interacting with like the Johto natives and like helping people. Well, he's not as out there as like Ash because he's the protagonist, but Gary's helpful in his own regard. Like when that hydroelectric plant in that episode where they were in was coming apart, like Gary asked Nurse Joy to go and see the injured Pokemon. He told the plant people to reroute the electricity. He helped Ash twist the lever. Heck, Gary during Sinnoh was Mondo helpful with the Hunter J stuff.
Yeah,
So like, yeah,
I feel like before the brass tower plot happens, I feel like Gary would be like, "So, did you defeated Jasmine? Yeah, I battled her Magnemite and her Steelix." And he's like, "Her what? Her Magnemite? My dude, you faced my Caesar. Like, she didn't even use the Magneton? Nah, I have to course correct this. I'm sorry. Like, nah, 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 nah. You did not got a badge by defeating a Magnemite. At this stage, nah, nah. Skarmory, show them what a real steel type is made of."
I mean, would Gary be saying that because Jasmine would have used her Magneton against Gary? Maybe he had more badges than Ash at the moment, or maybe Jasmine
Yeah,
had one and
probably
he was
she
farther
she
along.
she probably used the Magneton, or maybe she used the Fortress that we don't know that she had. No, honestly,
Hmm.
honestly, like maybe Gary was like a Magnemite. Yeah, are they? I know that they are steel types. Like it was recently discovered. She used an Ampharos against me. Why did she use a Magnemite against you? And Ash explains the Amphi thing, and he's like, man. Even so, I feel like your long due passing Magnemites. Like,
But I mean,
didn't you got your muck by helping one? Yeah, Ash, do you want to battle a proper steel type? What do you mean? And that's when Skarmory shows up, and then it's like, do you evolve your Firo with a metal coat? No, man, this ain't it.
yeah, no, but when Gary gets to Ecruteak, I can foresee a situation where he's just like going around the food stalls, like eating some like festival food or something, and like he's reading a book. Like you know how like Brock always has his pamphlet with like the town names and like
Yeah,
all this
with
stuff.
the
Gary
the
probably has like a small.
yeah, the guidebook. Yeah,
He probably has like a tourist pamphlet or like a lore book or something, and Gary's like trying to learn about the legendary beast, and he bumps into Ash and the gang, and then they bump into Morty and Usain. So when that whole Suicune thing happens, um, Gary's probably around like after they resolve it and like save the bell, help the Pokemon and stuff. This is where they battle, and
yeah.
then Ash would win here because Cyndaquil got a lot of good EXP from battling Jasmine and beating her Steelix, and he's like on the cusp of evolution. This is the battle that triggers it. He becomes Quilava, and heck, for the heck of it, did Cyndaquil know Flame Wheel yet? I don't think.
No, but you will probably learn at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, right here. The evolution would proc the evolution.
And
The evolution
I,
proc that.
I put Skarmory here because in the TCG, Skarmory is always accompanying Lugia and Oo in some rare conjoined art. So I felt like, hey, let's use Cyndaquil for an anti-Oo motif and let's use Skarmory for a Ho-Ho Lugia motif. That's what I wanted here.
Oh, hang on.
And Magneton, yeah. So I feel like this would be a cool, battle. It would also help make Gary help Sakura. Now, um, this so Ash would win, but now this is the interesting part, okay? But I mean, not really, because all of this has been sounding interesting. This is one that we talked about. Remember when Ash and Paul battled in Lake Acuity? It was like that
Yes.
6v6.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So something similar happens here too, and we discussed this. It's after Ash defeats Claire. It's after Ash defeats Claire. They go to the Dragon's Den and they meet each other in the Dragon Holy Land. And this is a battle where Gary wants to prepare Ash for the League, but also prepare himself for the League. And Gary is like, "You've been rotating a lot of your Pokemon like I did before. However, I want to see how your Johto only team is at this point." So Ash would have his six Mons at the table. Pikachu and Charizard would be around. Like for example, maybe Oak does something that Pikachu and Charizard are under Misty and Brock, because Misty had space to have Pikachu in the party, and I feel like Charizard returns, so Brock and Liza taking care of Charizard, and Charizard watching Gary battle, but using a new Mons in a way, right? Because they are new Mons for Charizard. Charizard had no idea that Gary had a Graveler and a Kadabra that they now evolved, right?
Pretty sure the Magmar surprising too.
Yeah, and seeing Magmar would make him remember some things, right? And then Gary now would have the Electabuzz, so it's like, oh, you now have the other Dark City Gym Pokemon. Hitmontop would now be evolved, and that would be what makes Phanpy become a Dawn fan earlier. This is mirroring Lake Acuity to a T, because Phanpy becomes Dawn fan, but it loses to Hitmontop. That's Phanpy's rival, right? And it would make Brock and Misty feel, because Brock is a breeder, so it's like Ash, it's Pokemon babies hatched from eggs. So let's see how they are when they are born with trainers and not born in the wilderness. And maybe Togepi would feel a little sympathetic for them, right? But yeah, this is the lineup. Like this is because this is mirroring the games as well, because in the games after you beat Giovanni, you do meet the rival in Route 22 before the Victory Road gates. So yeah, this is extremely convoluted, I know, but I feel like Ash and Gary only having one 6v6, it never felt right. So it's like, hey, let's test your new Mons and let's have the battle that we didn't have in Kanto, kinda. Pikachu and Charizard watching this fight after defeating Claire. It's like, let's see how Ash is able to handle on his own with the newbies.
So, okay, just off the bat, I like the fact that if Gary were to have any of the Hitmons, it's definitely Hitmontop. Because Tyrogue to Hitmontop, those are the Johto. They were introduced during the Johto days, so that's in their home region. Gary's battle style is really like versatile, right? He doesn't prescribe himself to any one strategy. He likes to he knows having strength is important, but also having defense, being fast, being specialized, be able to quickly change your strategy on a fly. He's both by the book and off the books, so he's really well rounded. Hitmontop is a great pick because of its flexible battle style. It can use triple kick, spinning top, it can do all that stuff. It can change it on dime. Porygon 2, very good too, because it's an analytical Pokemon. Gary would probably have interest in using an artificial Pokemon like that.
I still had canon that Porygon 2 is the one that made Ash's computer like when Ash is searching on Gary data and then he cannot really find everything. Like I feel like Porygon 2 is just messing with Ash.
Just obscuring him, trying to get info on Gary.
Yeah, trying
So
to
then
yeah.
Kadabra finally evolved. It's good to see that happens. It probably happened. Let's see. If we look in the whole photo trek, it probably happened after Bugsy. If we're putting a timeline to it, so
It could have it could have maybe Gary was like, hey, I'm gonna battle a Gengar that's Morty. I need to. What's your name? Eugene? Yeah, let's touch trade. Eugene, you also have an Alakazam. You also want an
yeah,
Alakazam,
maybe
right?
they probably bumped into each other.
Yeah,
I
like
can see that.
yeah, because Eugene also has an Alakazam. Hey, you could have a trainer. Let's touch trade. I need an Alakazam as well.
So yeah, he trade evolves Kadabra to Alakazam, and Graveler becomes a Golem.
Yeah.
So that's good. Um, him having Magmar and Electabuzz makes a lot of sense. Those just feel like Gary Pokemon. Those feel like rival Pokemon. And like on Ash's side, Totodale's the odd one out, not being fully being evolved yet. But Quilava and Bayleaf are gonna pull a lot of weight. Plus, Totodale's pretty strong for its stage, so there's no worries there. Noctowl's the only one that kind of feels a little out of place. I feel like Noctowl wouldn't perform too well because even with the win against Morty, Noctowl doesn't do anything incredibly impressive until
I
like
feel
Sinnoh.
I feel like in this one, Noctowl would probably replace Pikachu against Chuck, if anything. I feel like that could
Yeah,
have. I feel like Noctowl would have replaced Pikachu against Chuck, so that Pikachu doesn't have to lose, just to make Bayleaf look better. um,
but yeah, my
maybe.
thoughts. Who do you see winning this fight?
Oh, Gary wins. Gary wins this fight. It's by a hair, but Gary wins this fight. So Gary has. So it's basically this is Gary's first 6v6 win. With Ash, it was against Drake. But I feel like a lot could happen. Like, for example, Quilava battling Magmar, Totodile trying to use Crunch on Alakazam and then trying to steal the spoons, Bayleaf trying to, like maybe Bayleaf tries to, battle Electabuzz, Noctowl and Porygon 2 having like a bird battle, right? Heracross trying to face Hitmontop because they're both fighting types. Maybe Fampi and Golem face each other in a rollout match. There's a lot. This will because it's a 6v6, right? This will be a battle with full switches, right? This is not A beats C, C beats D, like none of that. There will be a lot of switches. The last ones,
Yeah.
the last ones would be, the last ones would be Hitmontop and Fampi. If this mirrors Lake Acuity, it means that Ash would only defeat 2 out of 6 Gary's Mons. Because look at Ash's compared to Gary's, right? Who are
Yeah,
who
Golem would beat Quilava, Alakazam takes out Totodile,
yeah.
Magmar beats Bayleaf, Electabuzz would give Heracross the business, and Porygon would just cause a lot of problems for Ash.
Who do you think, like, out of Gary's Mons, pick 2 to lose? Like, who are the 2 that are
Oh,
more likely to lose?
so among the two who would go down, I think Magmar eventually goes down,
Yeah,
and
yeah, especially because Heracross would do the Johto League feat here.
Magmar and Electabuzz. Those two are the ones that go down because look at Alakazam, far too powerful psychically. Golem has the defense to keep in the battle,
and
and
they
Porygon is far too tricky.
Alakazam and Golem have prior experience battling Ash.
True.
Yeah, I feel like, okay, Gary, you have to lose Magmar and Electabuzz. So it's kind of like, yeah, Ash defeated Magmar before. That's fine. And Electabuzz, he didn't defeat Drake, so it's like maybe Bayleaf defeats Electabuzz so that it kind of avenges Bulbasaur in a spiritual way. So it's like, okay, that's fine. Um, but yeah, now after 8 battles, they would have just an honorary one in Tojo Falls. Wait, huh? I put one Noctowl here. Oh, I know what I did because of the colors to not contrast. Kind of stupid that I did this. Anyways, so I just wanted for this battle to happen where they have a tie, so that Noctowl and Gyarados face in the Tojo Falls on their way to Mount Silver. Maybe they could reunite with Suicune or maybe meet Entei here. It's one of the battles that happens in the opening where we see a Noctowl, just styling on the Gyarados, and I'm like, maybe it's Gary's. Like, this is just, this would be just, like a victory road match, but not really. Now, and also to even out the battle record of Ash. And last but not least, it's the final battle. It's Ash defeating Gary and having a battle rate of 7 wins, 6 losses, 5 ties in a total of 18 matches, right? 9 in Kanto, 9 in Johto. Final match. Final match.
I see some things.
Meganium with no return at this point. Not Body Slam. In a way, it's just Body Slam but glowing yellow.
Hey, you have Gary have both Nidoking and Queen. That would spell trouble for Ash. Hitmontop takes Scissor's spot, and Umbreon's in. Wow, I like the composition of both sides.
I feel like, I wanted for Gary to and Ash to have, like, a colorful team, and I feel like this makes sense. They use 3 Pokemon of, like, Gary uses... Ash uses 3 Pokemon of Kanto and 3 of Johto, while Gary, in terms of Johto, he only uses, Hitmontop and Umbreon. But I feel like, using both Needles, it's like, yeah, I kind of need to use both Needles again. It's a cool nod to their first match, because he also used both Needles. In this one, I mean.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like, like, hey, I'm going to use Blastoise, I'm going to use Arcanine, because I used them against you. I'm going to reform Pinsir and actually use a fighting type, that's Hitmontop. I'm going to make my EV evolve, and I'm going to use both my Nidos to have a callback to our first match. And Ash is like, I like colors. I'm going to use yellow, orange, beige, green, blue, and gray. But I feel like I feel like Ash using these ones would make a lot of sense. Like, because that way, with maybe Bayleaf becomes Meganium by defeating Casey or Vincent or someone else, and that way Ash would have Bulbasaur, Wartortle, Charizard, and he would have Totodile, Quilava, Meganium. So he would have a starter of each stage. I feel like, that would make a lot of sense. He doesn't use Tauros here, sadly. Then again, Tauros was fodder. He loses to 1 Hyper Beam of Nidoqueen. He doesn't use Mug, but he used Mug prior. He doesn't like. I feel like this would. I feel like this could unironically work. Maybe he would win at the same fashion that he won. Charizard defeating Blastoise. I feel like.
Actually, I think I would put the matchups from the bottom up. So imagine the first match would be Ash's Donphan versus Gary's Hitmontop, right? Like, you try to set up a rivalry there. Lead that, have Donphan win this time.
Okay.
So you get it out of the way. Donphan wins, then Gary brings out Arcanine, and Arcanine beats Donphan, because Donphan's injured from the battle with Hitmontop. Heracross comes out, and they take each other out. It's a tie. So Heracross and Arcanine take each other out. Arcanine has the advantage being a fire type, but Donphan hurt Arcanine some with, like, rollout. So Heracross still managed to bring it down with him.
Or Earthquake, because Earthquake was still not banned at this point.
True. So then they take each other out. So then it's Meganium versus Umbreon.
And Pikachu already defeated Umbreon, so Pikachu defeating Umbreon again.
There's no need for Pikachu to have another match with Umbreon, because there's something further in. So then Meganium versus Umbreon. Meganium wins, but by the skin of her teeth. Like, Umbreon's, like, I don't know, using Toxic or, like, Shadow Ball and being very tricky and defensive, but eventually Meganium's return, like you said, takes it. So then Nidoqueen comes out, and she puts Meganium down. So then Snorlax comes out, takes down Nidoqueen with Ice Punch, but then Nidoking takes out Snorlax with, like, Rock Smash or Earthquake. Then it's Charizard versus Nidoking. They take each other out.
Okay. I get it. Like, to not repeat canon, you make Charizard defeat Gary's Charizard. Like,
Yeah, he's the Needle King.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's lieutenant. It's a battle of a kaiju.
Do they take each other
No,
out in the
no, no,
final battle?
no, because like if you go to match number one, I'm gonna put the slide here again.
Yeah, it was Charmander Pikachu versus
Yeah, look at the
Yeah.
slide. Like maybe Nidorino defeated Charmander, and
Yeah, so that's
Pikachu defeated Nidorino, and then Nidorino beats Pikachu. So, if anything, if anything, we retroactively made Nido King Charizard's rival in this one, which is kind of funny.
yeah. Yeah, it feels more forever.
To spice things up. So we are doing what the manga did: Pikachu versus Blastoise.
Yes. Yeah,
Fresh.
so it's
They're
not
both and they're both fresh.
both
That's the thing.
fresh. Yeah, it's basically like it's both their starters. Like it was
Yeah.
Gary Squirtle, fully evolved, and Ash's Pikachu after going through grinding experience. Um, I have Ash win here, obviously, but it's very similar to what happens in the Orange Islands with Drake, right? Blastoise is spamming Ice Beams and Hydro Pumps and using Rapid Spin. It's throwing Pikachu for a loop with how, like, adaptable it's being. So
Yeah.
then Ash does, like, some tricky stuff, right? Like doing, like, oh, aim your Thunderbolt at the cannon. Or like, okay, use quick attack and scurry around beneath its legs to confuse it because Blastoise is a tortoise and it doesn't have like if you get if you do a wild ash strategy, right, you can just have Pikachu use quick attack, slide on the ground to get beneath it, and then like hit it with a quick attack, but get up
I
right close
feel
and personal.
I feel like one thing that they could do is Blastoise uses Rapid Spin, and then Pikachu uses Quick Attack on top of the shell. So he's using Quick Attack on the Rapid Spin, like how Freed's Pikachu uses Volt Tackle in spirals to make that storm. So Pikachu uses Quick Attack on the top of the Rapid Spin so that he can make the shell be a lightning rod so Thunder won't miss.
Yeah, no, you can definitely do some really creative battling like that. And then
Especially since you know Hydro Pump will douse the battlefield, so Pikachu's electric moves have more AOE.
so I for this situation, I'd probably have it to where Ash is struggling a lot because Gary's Blastoise has a lot more power on Pikachu, but Pikachu's faster. I think the way I have this turn out, Ash thinks that Pikachu needs more power and it needs a way to be able to cope with Gary's stronger Blastoise's stronger moves. And then he has like a crazy idea. If it were up to me here, I have Pikachu use Thunder on itself, and this is where Thunder Armor shows.
Oh, you debut Thunder Armor by Pikachu. Okay.
Right here. And then like the quick attacks, making contact with Blastoise while wearing the Thunder Armor causes paralysis on Blastoise. And
So
like
it's
if Gary tries to command him,
so it's a hint at static. Like we're going to Gen 3, we're going to hint
yeah,
static earlier. Okay.
yeah, no, I have the Thunder Armor sort of like prelude abilities and static. So making contact with the quick attack on Blastoise while wearing the Thunder Armor causes paralysis. And Gary's like, Blastoise, what's happening? Use Hydro Pump. And then
Spe-
like he
spe-
bites his
spe-
teeth and it doesn't come out.
especially since a Thunder Armored Pikachu using Quick Attack, it's a fake Volt Tackle.
Yeah, it's like a pseudo Volt Tackle. So then it ends with Ash commanding Pikachu to use a full power Thunder attack while wearing the Thunder Armor. And like the Thunder Armor fades because that excess energy is being used for this really powerful Thunder attack, and Blastoise is just fried.
Yeah, and then they would probably face each other, and then you know Blastoise would faint. Like maybe Pikachu would not faint, but he would just like be a little zazzy, right? Um, this means that when Ash battles Harrison, when I feel like in this league, Ash should have battled Casey and Richie in the round robins, but Gary would battle Vincent and what's the girl? Macy. Yeah, like Macy and Vincent would be Gary's matches in this one. So Ash gets a proper fight with Casey and he does defeat Richie at last. Against Harrison, he would probably use not this team. He would have to use weaker ones. They would still get the job done. Maybe Charizard is there because he's not tired from Blastoise, but he still loses to Blaziken because it's like, yeah, Charizard, you defeated Nidoking, cool, but you still lost to Blaziken, so it shows Charizard that, yeah, I need to train more. Um, I feel like that would be cool. Um, but I guess that's it. And to wrap it all up, how do you think that their farewell would go? In terms of, because Gary would save Misdreavus and he would tell about the Pokemon researcher thing, and then when they go to Pallet, Ash would, he would talk about with Gary, right, before Team Rocket ambushing them, and he uses the cutlery to escape that trap hole. How do you feel like this Gary and this Ash? How do you feel like their departure would be? What would their feelings as trainers towards each other would be like, in terms of having respect and a camaraderie? Because they actually have fights here. We gave them a total of 15 fights. In the canon, they have 2.5.
I mean, look, seeing as we're already sort of in what if territory, like, um, like we're breaking canon and doing things how we envision it could have gone. I don't think Ash and Gary's departure is a proper departure because it's like they meet with each other. Ash gives Gary the other half of the Pokeball back, right? And
Yeah.
then like so here's the thing, because of Richie's presence and because of how many more battles they had in this scenario than in canon, I think there's a shot in here that Gary accompanies Ash to Hoenn.
Instead of Brock.
Yeah, yeah.
So
In my view, I think like Gary saw like Ash's potential as a trainer, and battling him all that time got him really fired up. He doesn't make becoming a researcher his priority. He's still interested in it, but now he's like he sees Ash's battle with Harrison, and he talks to his own Pokemon and to
you
Professor
you
Oak,
you you
and
know
it
you
decides not to throw in the towel.
you know what I would do in this situation? I feel like Gary is like, I need to think of what I'm gonna do, and he thinks what he's gonna do in the events of Chronicles. Ash, May, and because Ash is with May in episode 1 and 2. They meet Max in episode 3, and Brock shows up in episode 4, and they are in the Petalburg Woods for a while. So we don't see.
Yeah.
I feel like Brock's epilogue in the gym would be where his Onyx becomes Steelix, and then Misty still. Brock and Misty will still show up in Hoenn, but it will be sporadic.
Yeah, different points.
I feel like because of that, we would not have the infamous Fortress explosion moment.
No, instead it would be probably like Blastoise, Rapid Spin.
I kind of feel like that could happen, but at the same time, I kind of want for for the events of Chronicles to happen. I kind of want for Ash, May, and Max to stay as they are until Rustboro, and they meet Gary in Rustboro because of Roxanne's school, museum, Devoncorp. I feel like that could, because Gary would still be a companion, but he would be accompanied by episode 15, 18, because we have the Team Aqua situation, and maybe Gary deals with Team Aqua because of Blastoise, and Ash's like, Team Aqua? We met Team Magma. What the hell are you talking about, right? And maybe I feel like Gary should join them later, because I feel like Brock showing up as when he showed up didn't give Ash, May, and Max like at least an arc of just being Ash, May, and Max. Gary would probably get Mudkip, and Mudkip would be like Blastoise's baby.
Yeah, I can totally see that. For episode 4 of AG, we can still have Brock show up and save them because he needs to like get them out of that situation with the Talo and needs to cook for them and get them the food and get them on their way. But he shows up like sporadically. Maybe he's not there to join. In this situation, like Gary could be waiting in Rustboro because he's doing research in the Pokemon school in Davin Cove, and he's learning about the region. And then he just bumps into them and decides to tag along.
Yeah, I feel, or you know who could replace Brock in that moment? Briny, because Briny is by Petalburg Woods, So instead of being 4